Mr. Mayor, we are now live.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. Due to the COVID-19 emergency declaration, this meeting of Ajax Council is being held electronically and live streamed on the town's website. All members of council in attendance are participating by audio and video teleconference, and town staff are available throughout the meeting if council members have any questions on the agenda. For members of the public watching from home, please bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties throughout the meeting. I'll now call this meeting to order, and Councillor Crawford, can you please do the land acknowledgement for us, please?
Yes, Your Worship. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gathered is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas, more specifically the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nations, signatory of the Gunshot Treaty of 1788 and the Williams Treaty of 1923. This land is and will continue to be the home of Indigenous people. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support the truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action and acknowledging the United Nations Declaration of Rights of the Indigenous People and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommends towards truth and recognition. Let us keep these principles close, and as we continue towards truth and reconciliation, and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Does any member of council have any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to the minutes. I have moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Lee, that the following minutes of previous council meetings be adopted. The regular meeting of May 17th, the special meeting of May 19th, closed session meeting of May 19th, special meeting of May 25th, closed session meeting of May 25th, special meeting of June 7th, and closed session meeting of June 7th. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, those in favor of approval of the minutes, please. I see all hands. That is carried. Mr. Clerk, were there any submissions by members of the public for question period?
Mr. Mayor, we did receive a request to ask questions with respect to the GGC report of May 30th regarding the fire master plan from the Ajax Professional Firefighters Association.
Okay. Is there a representative from Ajax Professional Firefighters here? Mr. Giannarine, please go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Mayor Collier, Your Worship, staff, council, I appreciate you giving me the time to speak today regarding the master fire plan. Again,
so
yep.
This is you're not able to make a delegation, but you are able to ask questions on the plan.
Right, and that's kind of where I was getting to.
Okay, go ahead.
I just would like to ask the question towards council. What is the plan for the master fire plan? I know you have to speak to staff. I know we want to move forward. I know there's budget submissions coming up in June, and that has to be due. What is council's vision for knowing that infrastructure needs to be in place with population growth?
Well, I'll attempt to answer that, and then I'll turn it over to CAO Baker or the chief, since you asked it to council. You attended the meeting on May 25th, I believe. So you heard our questions, and I think it was a bit of an eye opener for me. So what we've done is today the fire master plan will be received, and what I believe is happening next is the CAO and the chief are working, or the chief is working towards an implementation plan, which I understand will be coming back to council. One of the things you would have heard me speak of at the meeting was the priority of the request through the fire plan and which are the highest priority that we need to act on right away. So I think those priorities will be set out, and then recommendations will come back to council. Council will consider them, and they will form part of our budget process and probably part of our long-range budget process, because this will take years to phase in. But CAO Baker or Chief Lang, can you add to that, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think you pretty much covered it off. That's exactly the plan going forward. So, I've been meeting with the chief, talking about him putting together an implementation plan. Basically, what you just mentioned, a prioritization of the recommendations and so on. I believe the chief did correspond with the Ajax Professional Firefighters Association, let them know that before we brought forward further recommendations to council, that we were very interested to sit down with them and discuss their view of the fire master plan as well as the plan that we want to bring forward. But as you noted, the recommendations for moving forward will come through the budget process, and that's the next steps in the process.
Oh, you're muted, Clive.
Sorry, if I may ask one more question to yourself, council, and I believe it can go towards staff as well. With the understanding that staffing is needed with fire and emergency services, and knowing that that can take a long phased-in approach. From our perspective as the association, we consider safety and the safety of our members paramount, as well as with the public. To staff, knowing that we are short with firefighters, having that consideration of safety for employees, are we moving in a expedient fashion to close those gaps rather than that extended time like was put out in the report?
Okay, I'll do my best, and then we'll maybe the CEO can fill in the blanks and the chief. I just wanted to state that safety of our staff and our departments, our fire department, and of the public is of paramount importance to every member of council. I'm certain I can say that very confidently. But we have already done our budget process for this year, and all hiring and that type of thing has already been through the budget process and done. So there are certainly in some cases some things that we can bring in mid-year, especially in an emergency basis type thing. But in this case, some of the things on the fire master plan are big ticket items and not something that we could bring in sort of interim into the budget process. We've already set the tax rate for the year, and it just wouldn't be something that we could do. So it will have to go through the proper budget process after it's been identified. So it will be approval as of February next year. And then we usually do staff hires, because I think that is probably one of the highest priorities, is that additional crew. I think, I don't know till I see the report from staff. Then hiring would come after that, or implementation of whatever is approved would come after that. Chief or CAO, could you add?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Staff are working on a financial plan to be able to address the recommendations that were noted in the fire master plan. And we're happy to sit down with the association over the course of the summer to talk about what that plan looks like. And, we, as you noted, council and the senior management team, we take the safety of our staff, all of our staff, in high regards. So obviously our plan is to try and address any issues that we have as expediently as possible, taking into consideration all the community needs.
Thank you very much. And as new president of the Fire Association, I'd like to thank you all for your work, especially the chief and Deputy Burge and CFPO Vaughn that put their work into this master fire plan. It's very detailed, and we are looking as an association to support it moving forward. And I would like to thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And I think I said it personally, but I think on behalf of everybody, congratulations on taking over as president of Ajax Professional Firefighters.
Congratulations, Clive.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Moving on with the agenda, we have our first delegation. I'm going to modify the order of delegations. We're going to go with 5.1. I'm going to move up the audit report to the second one, and then Metrolinx, and then the construction update after. but right now, 5.1 delegation, not your TV friendly autism. Vanessa Shelley, parent of level 3 autistic child. Before you go ahead, Ms. Shelley, just let me make a quick public service announcement. I understand the presentation material for your delegation may be challenging for some viewers on our live stream and including council members and staff. And we've discussed this internally, asking that displaying the content is acceptable given the context, and have asked me to provide a brief warning before the delegation begins so that our live stream audience is aware that the content may be difficult to watch for some viewers. Copies of the slides are available in advance to the presentation package, which was published today. So that being said, Ms. Shelley, please go ahead when you're ready, and you will have 5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. You know, I've been wondering this whole time how I'm going to fit 5 minutes into a story that's been going on for 10 years of my life. Again, I'm Vanessa Shell, everyone, and like so many of you, I am a parent. Next slide, please. From the moment that I mentioned that I have an autistic son, many people will say to me, oh, like on TV. And I'm here to tell you today that my son's type of autism is not the TV-friendly autism you may be aware of on shows like The Good Doctor, Atypical, or even Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory. For his type of autism is the most severe. It is the level 3. Next slide, please. He was diagnosed at the age of 2, and his cognitive function remains at that level even today. He's considered nonverbal, though he does have a few words and phrases he can say with much intense therapy. At age 3, his extreme violence began, which resulted in my broken nose, endless scratches, bites, and bruises, not only to myself, but to any of his caregivers. This violence continued until the age of 6. He stayed in diapers till nearly the age of 8, though sadly, many at this level will never progress and potty train and will continue diapers into adulthood. Next slide, please. At the age of 9, his self-injuring began. Watching your child obsessively bash his head against walls, counters, and furniture to the point of bruising and bleeding, tearing flesh from his body, or pulling hair out of his own head is a gut-wrenching experience, to say the least. Next slide, please. In April, I frantically had to call 911 as he tried to smash his head through a plate glass window and would beat me if I tried to stop him. He ended up at Sick Kids Hospital in the psych ward for 5 days, heavily sedated and strapped to a bed at some points. He was considered a violent patient, so I had to have a support worker in the room 24/7 for safety, as well as a guard posted outside the door. Next slide, please. As a parent, our mandate is to keep our children safe, and this has become nearly impossible as he reaches my size because his obsessions, violence, and self-injuring compulsions have become increasingly worse. In fact, only 2 weeks after being released from hospital, he hit his head off my steering wheel while we were driving on the 401, nearly killing us. This has happened multiple times since. And he has no sense of danger, so special locks must go on our doors to prevent him from wandering and not being able to explain where he lives due to the fact that he's nonverbal. Next slide, please. He requires also constant attention and supervision, as even taking a moment to use the washroom or to have a shower means he will tear lights out of the ceiling, rip outlets from the walls, break glass, or headbang. Many are shocked when they come to my home that I still have to baby-proof my home so he doesn't dump chemicals on himself or break dishes. This is the reason why so many parents have little energy to fight for the awareness that we need. Most of our marriages, including my own, have failed because of the stress and constant turmoil that this situation brings, which leaves more single parents exhausted, beaten, and alone. I've spent countless hours dealing with doctors, behavioral therapists, and crisis centers trying to regulate his behavior. Programs set out like ABA and IBI have actually asked him to leave because his needs and behaviors are simply more than they can handle, leaving myself to look after him alone. Last slide, please. I began to realize that the option to keep him full-time in my care was becoming more and more dangerous. So I began to inquire on long-term solutions and was hit with a really hard reality that there are 15-year wait lists for public care homes or private homes that could take him sooner, come at a cost of $530 per day. I'm telling you my story today because so many parents who end up on these long wait lists trying to keep their children home and safe end up getting injured seriously and some even killed. I want to commend the government for the steps they've taken to provide support for autism families in general, especially Councillors Khan and Councillors Dye. Thank you so much for truly hearing what the residents of Ajax and Durham region need, but also Ontarians and Canadians alike. Their commitment to letting our voices be heard is commendable and more appreciated than we can ever express in words. If there's anything I can do today, it's to bring awareness to a situation that so many are unaware actually exists, but are all too real for us parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Does any member of council have any questions for the delegate, please? Councillor Lee.
First, obviously, it goes without saying, thanks so much for sharing your story. You're right. You know, TV autism, you know, from the movies from Rain Man to now, it doesn't really paint an accurate picture sometimes. I'm sure there are a few cases like you see on television. For most, it's parents struggling like yourself and having to deal with this. It seems this comes to our attention more and more too. I think it was sometime last year, the year before, Ajax Council unanimously advocated for needs-based therapy to the province. So my question, sorry, I guess this is a question. The province had changed autism therapy, if I'm not mistaken. How did that affect you in terms of the way you could care for your son?
So we were granted more funding to get IBI and ABA. Those are the two, it's intense behavioral intervention and applied behavioral analysis. Those are the two sort of gold standard therapies that are supposed to help with autism behaviors. My son was in a center for almost 2 years. And because he's become so violent and the self-injuring behaviors have become so high, they have asked him to leave. So now, unfortunately, we're at a point where that program no longer serves us benefit.
Okay, thank you for answering that.
You're welcome.
It's, yeah, obviously, I don't have a doubt in my mind this motion will pass unanimously. I also think there's a next component, which I'll add when it's brought up of, I also think we need a national autism strategy as well. I think it's something that more and more countries are having to realize to deal with. And I think it behooves the federal government to start being proactive about this. I think they've started the process, but parents like yourselves can't wait anymore. So I'll add that once the motion comes on board. But thank you for sharing your story. Any support we can give, we absolutely will. And just, thank you for continuing to advocate on behalf of parents across Ajax and Durham region. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Vanessa, for bringing your story to us. Prior to COVID, I was working with twin autistic girls, only an hour a day, and I was exhausted. I absolutely cannot wrap my head around what you must deal with on a day to hourly basis. And you're a true hero, honestly. And I'm shocked that the waiting list is 15 years for you to have to wait to make. That's a difficult decision to actually come to anyway. But then to have to think that you had to wait 15 years to even have a hope of some sort of relief. And so this motion that Councillor Khan and Councillor Dyes are coming forward with is absolutely imperative. So thank you so much for your story, and I definitely will support it.
Thank you.
Councillor Tyler Moore.
Very quickly, thank you, Vanessa, for sharing your story. Talk about putting things in perspective. Thank you for that. That's amazing. On that point, does your son have some sort of schooling or direction each day?
So currently, right now, he is normally in the special ed schooling program at Durham District School Board. Right now, though, because they are not operational in class, he has no program.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could talk to you for hours, but thank you so much for coming today, and again for your perspective. And
thank you. Councillor Dyes.
Hi, Vanessa, and thank you so much for coming to present today. I think Your presentation, as I say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, was really educational and helped us understand the severity of your son's needs and what you're living through. And I don't know how you cope with that. You've obviously done a good job so far. I had a question about the wait list, the 15-year wait list. What type of facilities are they? And I'm assuming they're not common, so they're not in every kind of region.
Yeah, so it starts, you can't even apply to put them on the wait list until they're 16. And they have to follow certain criteria too. So they have to be at a certain level of autism. It's typically usually the level 2, level 3 autism, the higher supported needs. They simply just, every time I've talked to them, even in the past few months, it seems to be the criteria gets harder and harder. I think they're trying to get that wait list down by making the criteria harder. But so many parents, like I said, who try to keep their children home while they're on these wait lists. I mean, my son will be about 6'4", if I'm basing it off of my side of the family and his father, and about 250 pounds when he is 18. While he's a happy-go-lucky kid, that's great. If he decides to get violent, it could be very dangerous for not only myself and people around him, but for himself as well.
So it's paramount that he gets placement soon for
Yes.
both of your safeties.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions from council? Questions, Councillor Khan?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Mayor, thank you very much. Vanessa, a comment and a question. Listen, I know how hard this was for you to do this PowerPoint and have this presentation, and a lot of encouragement, and you brought it out and you shared your story. Quick question though. So your son has a few years more, and there's a long wait and there's some sort of help, but in the past, how are these types of cases handled on a long-term basis?
So unfortunately, autism wasn't understood in the past. In the 40s, 50s, and 60s, typically these kids were put into institutions. A lot of times they were put into straitjackets and chained to their beds. Or they started to do psychosurgery, they called it, by lobotomizing them. So basically taking a hammer and going through their transorbital lobe and knocking out their frontal lobe to sort of make them like a zombie and sort of numb those behaviors. So it's really been a very misunderstood neurological disorder that has been treated very unkindly in the past.
Thank you for your answer, Ms. Shelley. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions to the delegate? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Shelley, for sharing your story. I believe Councillor Khan and Councillor Dias have a motion that I think it's appropriate if we bring this forward at this time. Councillor Khan, would you like to introduce your motion?
Yes, and it's about what Ms. Shelley spoke of, the support for autistic adults. We have 135,000 Ontarians characterized by differences in a way that the individual communicates and relates to the world around them. And this level 3 obviously requires substantial support. I really want this to come forward, and hopefully it's passed, and then we can move further along with it so that parents and children can get this kind of support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dias, would you like to speak to your motion as a seconder?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Mayor Collier. Again, thank you to Vanessa, because I can't imagine how difficult it is to share your story and watching your son go through this. And I think like many issues, medical issues, we tend to put people in the wrong places sometimes. And I spoke to previously to you about a situation I saw where a young person who had mental disability was put into an old age, the long-term care home. And that was not the place to be because she was in her 40s. So there are those types of problems because we just don't have the right facilities. And I think it's really very important that the right facilities for this type of issue with the severe autism is paramount, like I say, for the safety of the child and yourself, and so that the child also gets the medical attention that they require, and the learning too. So I'm glad you brought this forward. Now, I think your presentation is great, and I would ask the clerk if it's possible to also forward the presentation to the list at the province below of all the politicians that should receive this. I again think that presentation was just very interesting. It spoke volumes about your situation. And perhaps, if you could also forward to the clerk your notes on that, because it tells a story. And I think the story is very, very important to hear. So thank you for coming again. And I really hope that this helps move things along.
Thank you. Comments, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to move an amendment. It's just kind of adding on to this, kind of building on it. So I guess it'd be the next point, number 3, and more or less it Ajax Council calls on the federal government to expedite a federal or a national autism strategy. I would need a seconder in the motion before I can speak on it.
We get a seconder, second by Councillor Crawford. Please, so your motion is to remove number 3 as a number 4 and insert number 3 that the federal government also institute a national autism strategy.
And then amend number 3 to include the Durham Region MPs as well as Prime Minister Trudeau.
Right.
And, I spoke on it briefly. I think this province has not done the best job with this file since it's taken control. We've gone through 3 ministers on this file, and after taking away a lot of the sports that were needs-based, we are kind of left with what we have now, which I don't think is working. If you speak to any parent of an autistic child or a family member who is autistic, I think we need the federal government to start setting some federal guidelines on autism, as well as the support structures in place, and in support of additional financial support we can offer families. So I'll just leave it at that. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further comments? Any comments on the amendment? Just, Councillor Lee, you are adding the Prime Minister to item 3, which is now item 4. I would suggest also, Mr. Clerk, at the same time, we update based on the cabinet shuffle that happened. Minister Scott is no longer Minister. I think it's King Asurma now. MPP Phillips is now Minister Phillips. And the other Minister of Childcare is now Minister
Fullerton.
Yes, Fullerton. So if you can just make those will probably be a friendly amendment.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think. So the amendment is on the screen. Those in favor of the amendment, if there's no further, I see all hands. That is carried. On the main motion as amended. I'll just very quickly, since I haven't spoken on it, I absolutely feel for you, Michelle, and every other parent in this situation. I couldn't fathom, thankfully, I haven't had to be in that situation, but I don't know I couldn't even consider what it'd be like. This is something that is at the federal provincial level. So we can give our voice, but I would think that this may be also something that we should maybe look at bringing, or I should look at bringing to Ontario big city mayors as well, and potentially Councillor Dyes, if you want to bring it to the region as well, as something to be considered there, because again, in the big world, Ajax is a fairly small fish, but if we use those other bigger voices, I think it will have more weight when this comes to the province and hopefully the federal government if they come to the table with national policy. So I'll just make those suggestions. Anything further from members of council? Okay. Did you want a recorded vote, Councillor Khan?
I would love that, Mayor.
Okay. Recorded vote, please, Mr. Clerk.
On the motion, in favor or opposed, Councillor Khan?
In favor.
Regional Councillor Lee?
In favor.
Councillor Tyler Morin?
Favor.
Councillor Bauer?
In favor.
Regional Councillor Crawford?
In favor.
Regional Councillor Dyes?
In favor.
Mayor Collier?
In favor. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Shelley, for your delegation.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley.
Thank
Moving
you,
on.
everyone.
to the next presentation. We are moving item 5.3 up to second, the 2020 financial statements and audit report. Ms. Chung, I hope I pronounced that correctly, associate partner with Deloitte.
That is correct. Thank you so much for having me here today to present the results of our audit to you. My name is Lo-Yin Chung, and I'm a partner with Deloitte LLP, the appointed auditors for the town of Ajax. I will not be screen sharing today, but will be speaking briefly to the materials that were previously included. Included in your documents are two items. The first being the report on the results of our 2020 audit of the town. And the second item is a copy of the town's audited financial statements, which have been prepared by management under Canadian public sector accounting standards. I'm going to take a few minutes just to run through some of the key highlights outlined in our year-end communications report to you. But before doing that, I'd like to extend my thanks to the town's finance team led by Treasurer Diane Valentin for their assistance and cooperation during the audit this year. As a result of COVID-19, our audit was conducted completely remotely without access to any of the staff on site, which required incredible coordination as well as effort from the finance team. So we do want to make note of the fact that their effort was very much appreciated and was a key part of why we were able to bring forward the audited financial statements for you today. In terms of the key highlights from our audit this year, which you would have seen in our results report, our audit is now complete. And our audit was also conducted in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards. These are the standards that are applicable to all the CPA firms in the conduct of audits across the country. One of the other concepts that I do want to bring to your attention as it relates to the audit is this concept of materiality. We rely on the concepts of materiality to help us assess on an overall basis whether the financial statements of the town are fairly presented. It's a numerical benchmark. And in line with prior years, we have used a percentage of your total expenses for the year, which works out to around $3 million. That is to say that on an overall basis, if we were to identify errors as it relates to the audit that accumulate to over $3 million, we would not be able to issue a clean audit opinion. On a much lower transactional basis, we actually report back to the town if we identify errors on an individual basis greater than $151,000, so a much lower benchmark. And we're very pleased to report that on both levels, we have no errors to report. The audit itself is very, very clean. And that is, again, in part thanks to management as well as their great efforts as well. As part of our audit, we also identify any areas for recommendations in terms of internal controls and processes. This is part of our audit on an annual basis. And we're also very happy to report that there are no findings and no recommendations as well. Again, a very clean report card for management. As part of our overall audit plan development at the commencement for our audit, we identified two areas of audit risks. Audit risks really drive our focus areas that we perform as part of our audit. And those were revenue recognition as well as management override of internal controls. Both of these areas are spoken to at more detail in our year-end communications report and are also consistent with the prior year. So overall, there are no changes. So on an overall basis, that really is all I wanted to summarize as it relates to the results of our audit, but happy to take any questions at this time before I move on to the financial statements themselves.
Any questions by members of council? Please go ahead, Ms. Chung.
Perfect, thank you so much. In terms of the overall financial statements themselves, I won't go into any great detail. There are only a few items that I do want to highlight for your information. As I've mentioned before, the financial statements for the town are prepared in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So under Canadian public sector accounting standards, there are a few key differences compared to the town's budgeting process. The biggest being that the town budgets on a fund basis from an operating and capital fund perspective, whereas these financial statements are prepared on an accrual perspective. So there is a key distinction in few areas as it relates to cash inflows and outflows, as opposed to revenue versus expenses. This is a very key distinction in any municipality's financial reporting versus budgeting process. So this is something that I do want to highlight. The only other item that I do want to include for your information and flag for your attention is that in line with prior year, we included additional note disclosure this year in note 17 to the financial statements to speak to the overall impact of COVID-19 on the municipality. This is something that we are recommending for all of our clients in the municipal sector this year to ensure that we are properly communicating to the public the impact of COVID-19 and also recognizing the fact that it does have an impact financially on any municipality. So those are really the only two items that I want to address, but happy to take any questions as well.
Thank you. Any questions by members of council? Doing a great job.
Thank you so much. And that concludes my presentation, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Valentin, did you have anything to add?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Lillian summed it all up for us.
So I don't have a resolution. Are you looking for any, is this just a presentation for information? Are we making any decisions today on this?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I think it's to accept them and approve them as they are.
I don't have, Mr. Clerk, maybe you can help me. I don't have a resolution on this. So
Mr. Chair, there was no resolution or recommendations from staff with respect to this item, so it's probably appropriate to receive for information.
okay, thank you. Well, we don't need to take any action then if it's received for information. All right, thank you, Ms. Chung, for your presentation. Very much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Moving on to item 5.2, Durham Scarborough BRT update. We have Matthew Gotsky, I hope I said that correctly, and David Hopper from Metrolinx and IBI Group, Parsons Corporation IBI Group with the presentation. Are you here?
Good afternoon, it's Kristen Damasi and Margaret Parkhill. Matthew and Dave Hopper are still in the Town of Whitby Council presentation, so they'll join us as soon as they can, but myself and Margaret will give the BRT update.
Would you prefer that we move on to the other and give them a bit more time?
I do what works for you guys.
Well, why don't we do, is Mr. Fernando ready to go?
We're happy to start now.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thank you and good evening, everybody. Thanks for having us here this evening to give an update on the Durham Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit project. Could you turn to the next slide, please? This is the land acknowledgement. So Metrolinx wishes to recognise that it operates on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat peoples. In particular, we acknowledge that the Durham Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit project traverses both Treaty 13 territory with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the Williams Treaties territory, specifically the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. We acknowledge that Metrolinx operates on these lands and has a responsibility to work with the original keepers of this territory and the many diverse Indigenous peoples living here today. Metrolinx remains committed to engaging with Indigenous peoples and nations on the Durham Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit project. Next slide, please. And this is a map of the Greater Golden Horseshoe, which Metrolinx operates, and the various Indigenous communities that intersect with the work that we do. Next slide, please. So onto the BRT specifically, I think everybody's pretty familiar with this map by now. This is the project study area. So we're looking at bus rapid transit between downtown Oshawa at Simcoe Street, along Highway 2, Kingston Road and Ellesmere Road into the City of Toronto, connecting at the Scarborough Town Centre and TTC bus terminal. Next slide, please. This is just a map of the employment and population density in 2041. So as you can see, the corridor is really central to the urban growth centres of Oshawa, Pickering and Scarborough, but you can sort of see, you know, the darker the green, the greater the population and or land use forecasts there are. So, you know, obviously Scarborough, Pickering, Ajax, Whitby and Oshawa are pretty key destinations along the corridor. Next slide, please. So this is just the existing and future transit ridership. In 2019, there was 10,000 daily riders on DRT Pulse, and our projections in 2041, there's 38,400 daily riders. So you can sort of see on the map to the left that Highway 2 is the busiest corridor in Durham, and it's kind of the key transit corridor to connect the population projections for 2041. And of course, it has higher ridership than other corridors, including Simcoe and Taunton Road as well. Next slide, please. So we did do an initial business case in 2018, which sort of looked at the feasibility of the corridor, whether the corridor had enough benefits to warrant going into a preliminary design. And so we did find a number of economic benefits associated with the BRT, and we found a positive benefit cost ratio. This business, we are working on a preliminary design business case, and which will be an update to this initial business case, and the results of that will be published as part of this phase of work that we're currently doing. Next slide, please. So this is the overall timeline. You can see we've been working on this project for a long time. We're currently in the preliminary design and transit project assessment process, so the EA and TPAP phase. We've spent the last 2 years working on the preliminary design and the environmental assessment work, and we're here today to present the preferred option prior to starting the official TPAP and environmental assessment process, looking to wrap up that at the end of the year, early next year, and as well as publish the preliminary design business case around then as well. Next slide, please. I'll hand off to Margaret Parkhill, who's our lead consultant from IBI Group, to take us through the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Kristen, and good evening, everyone. My name is Margaret Parkhill with the consulting firm IBI Group. Picking up where Kristen left off, a quick recap of the consultation to date for this phase of the project, which started in 2019. We had 2 rounds of public information centers in 2019, back when we could meet in person. We switched and moved online during COVID for the last year and a half, and have had additional stakeholder meetings and a round of public consultation at the end of 2020. There was also an advisory committee presentation to the Ajax Accessibility Committee in December 2020, and a special virtual event specific to the town of Ajax in January 2021. Next slide, please. We've heard from different people all along the 36-kilometer corridor, interest in improving transit service, transit reliability and comfort, improving accessibility to transit and for walking along the corridor, improving active transportation. We've also heard concerns about changes to traffic patterns, including access restrictions. In Whitby and Oshawa, we've heard concerns about impacts to on-street parking. And we've also certainly heard in the town of Ajax concerns about cultural heritage resources. Next slide, please. Across the 36-kilometer corridor, we're proposing a total of 49 bus rapid transit stops. These stops would always be located at signalized intersections, and in the town of Ajax, we're proposing a total of 9 stops. Next slide, please. We wanted to take a step back and talk a bit more about the what was called the pinch point in the initial business case, the section of Kingston Road through Pickering Village from Elizabeth Street to Rotherglen Road, sort of centered around the intersection of Church Street. So going back to the fall of 2019, we took out to public and stakeholders our evaluation of 5 different options. You see on the screen there, ranging from option 1, sort of a lighter touch in terms of no real change to infrastructure, through to option 5, which was widening Kingston Road out to 6 lanes through Pickering Village. At the time, our technically preferred recommendation was option 3, which was to keep Kingston Road at 4 lanes and convert the 2 curb lanes, the outside lanes, to bus only. From the public, from stakeholders, and from staff, we heard concerns about option 3, that perhaps there was not enough traffic capacity and that there might be a preference for widening Kingston Road to 6 lanes. At the same time, we heard concerns about widening Kingston Road and what that might mean for the cultural heritage through the Heritage Conservation District in Pickering Village. So we're really struggling to find a balance between those two options. Next slide, please. I won't read every word on the chart here, but the point of the slide is the two options, neither one really checked all the boxes. So widening out to 6 lanes would be better for transit and traffic perhaps, but again have those impacts to cultural heritage. Keeping Kingston Road at 4 lanes, perhaps not the most efficient solution either. And we're trying to really struggle to find this balance between transit, traffic, and cultural heritage. Next slide, please. What we then took forward was a 5-lane option. So this is our current recommendation for Pickering Village. We're zoomed in here a little bit at Church Street, but this would extend from about Rotherglen Road in the east over to Elizabeth Street. So the idea is it's this sort of very context sensitive, somewhat unique solution for Pickering Village, which is a unique heritage area. The 5 lanes would include 2 lanes in the center of Kingston Road, dedicated to buses only, 2 lanes for general traffic in the eastbound direction, so maintaining the same number of lanes that are there today for eastbound traffic, and then providing a single lane for westbound traffic. You can get a sense of the image on the screen here, which is an aerial view, so it's as if you're up in the sky looking down on the road, how this impacts, or sorry, I should say mitigates impacts to the Heritage District, and it stays away from that conservation district on the north side of Kingston Road, also avoids any impacts to the cemetery over at Randall, and tries to strike that balance between transit, traffic, and cultural heritage. Next slide, please. Zooming out to take a look at the design from end to end in the town of Ajax, I've just been speaking about number 2 on the screen, from Elizabeth to Rotherglen. Looking west from Elizabeth Street over to Notion Road and connecting into the city of Pickering, we are proposing to widen Kingston Road to the 6-lane cross section. So again, continuing those center running bus lanes into the city of Pickering, as well as widening the Duffins Creek Bridge by about 7 meters. At the east end of Pickering Village, so starting at Rotherglen and heading east to the town of Whitby, again proposing a 6-lane cross section, 2 lanes in the center for buses, a total of 4 lanes for general traffic. That's 2 lanes in each direction. Also indicated on the slide are the little traffic signal icons, red, yellow, and green. That indicates all the existing or proposed future signalized intersections along the corridor. Every BRT stop would be located at a signalized intersection. That means that pedestrians and transit riders have a safe place to get across to access the BRT stop. This also indicates where left turns and U-turns will be permitted along the corridor. So with the addition of center running bus lanes, it will restrict left turns and change access patterns along the corridor, which will have an improvement to the safety performance of the road. Next slide, please. Next up, this is an artist's rendering of how this project could revitalize and how the corridor might look with bus rapid transit. So this is an existing aerial photography of the intersection at Kingston Road and Church, looking west into Pickering Village. And if you advance to the next slide, please, you'll see the artist's rendering of how this now could look with the red lanes in the center of Kingston Road for buses only. You see the transit shelters located far side, again, located at a signalized intersection so that there's a safe crossing for pedestrians to access the platform. And again, here you see that unique configuration with 2 lanes eastbound for traffic, 1 lane westbound, as well as dedicated left turn lanes. Next slide, please. This shows that same intersection, but this time at ground level. So you're looking along the bus rapid transit lane in the center of the street. You see that enhanced transit shelter on the left-hand side and Pickering Village and Old Kingston Road in the distance. Next slide, please. Through the town of Ajax, the preliminary design generally fits within either the existing or designated right-of-way. We do anticipate property impacts on the southwest corner at Church Street. Next slide, please. We'll zoom in on that intersection. And again, here you can see that the proposed design focuses the widening towards the south and that protects and minimizes impacts to the Heritage District to the north of Kingston Road. There are no impacts to any of the buildings on the north side of Kingston Road. The proposed development on the southeast corner at 599 Kingston Road, this design is compatible with that development. And so the impact we see is on that southwest corner, where there are a couple of buildings that have cultural heritage value. And we'll work together with the town to figure out what the mitigation for that impact might be. One idea we've been talking about is potentially relocating the buildings still within their parcels, but further back from Kingston Road. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we heard concerns about traffic operations, and we understand that with the 5-lane cross-section, there would be a change in capacity to Kingston Road. The traffic models show that with maintaining the existing capacity eastbound, we don't see a lot of potential for diversion for eastbound traffic. For westbound traffic, we took a look at where traffic on Kingston Road is going today. Where is it coming from? Where is it going to? We found about 17% of the traffic, or let's say 15 to 20% of the traffic that's westbound, is longer distance trips. It doesn't start or end in Ajax. It's starting further east and heading further west. So we expect that traffic will divert and take other regional roads. This will also have an overall benefit to Pickering Village. We also see that traffic safety along the corridor will be improved. I've got more on that on the next slide. Thank you. So some of the safety benefits of the design include an improved pedestrian experience. So I talked about wider, more accessible sidewalks. The entire 36-kilometer corridor is going to get new sidewalks. Enhanced experience for transit users with larger enhanced shelters at all of the bus rapid transit stops. Improving the safety for cyclists. I've got more on active transportation in a couple of slides. And the big benefit that we're seeing is reducing collisions for drivers and for all road users. By restricting left turns to signalized intersections only, we'll see a significant benefit to safety for all road users, and especially for those severe left turn T-bone collisions. So in York Region, there's some stats on the bottom of the slide there that York Region is seeing 51 to 74% fewer collisions on roads that have this configuration with transit lanes in the center. Next slide, please. I'll just speed up along through the rest of the slides. Cultural heritage, as I mentioned, we understand is very important to the town, and we have been studying that closely with our heritage subconsultants and communicating our findings with the Heritage Advisory Committee as well as town staff, and we'll continue to keep those lines of communication open. Next slide for walking and cycling. Again, as I mentioned, the whole corridor is getting new walking infrastructure, new sidewalks, and the vast majority of the corridor is also getting new cycling infrastructure. On the next slide, we zoom in on the town of Ajax and see that we'll connect to the existing multi-use path and the bridge over Duffins Creek. In the west end, from Rotherglen Road to the east, there'll be new cycle tracks, which are raised to the level of the sidewalk, located behind the curb. So again, that added safety for cyclists being separated from the vehicles on the road. Unfortunately, through that pinch point of Pickering Village, we just don't have the space to get that dedicated cycling infrastructure from about Elizabeth Street to Rotherglen. So we're working with the town to identify alternate routes. On the next slide, I have just a few points about how to access the BRT platforms. We often get this question. As I mentioned, the PRT stops are always located at a signalized intersection, so that provides a protected place for pedestrians to get across. The platforms are accessible with a ramp that slopes up from the crosswalk to access the platform. And on the next slide, there's a few bits about the stop design. I won't read all the details other than to say the two main highlights are accessibility, weather protection, and we're also looking at taller platforms so that the buses won't need to kneel or deploy a ramp, and that will greatly improve accessibility. You won't need to have a ramp to get on the bus. You'll be able to just walk or roll directly from the platform onto the transit vehicle. The next slide lists out all the many technical studies that we're working on. I will not read them out other than to say all of this will form something called the Environmental Project Report. The team is hard at work at this, and it will be posted for the public to review once we're ready. The next slide has our next steps. So as I mentioned, we're working hard on the Environmental Project Report. We are addressing the motion that came from the June 9th meeting of Durham Region's Committee of the Whole to review a 6-lane option on Kingston Road from Rotherglen to Church. In summer 2021, we're planning to initiate the formal transit project assessment process. As Kristen mentioned, that's a time-limited process dictated by provincial legislation for environmental assessments. In the fall, the report would be ready for public review. So again, the consultation is not over. We're going to continue working with the public and with stakeholders to keep fine-tuning the preliminary design. And the preliminary design business case, again, will get started and we'll share that when it's ready. That concludes the presentation. Kristen and myself are here to take any questions, and I believe we also have representatives from Durham Region to help with any questions the town may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Questions? I have Councillor Tyler Morin first.
Thank you, Worship. Where do I begin? So, thank you very much for your presentation. Just a little bit of clarification and maybe some definitions. So when we're talking about the BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, coming across Ajax, basically from Lake Ridge to Rotherglen, it's just going to be shuffling what is already there. There's already 2 lanes going east, there's already 2 lanes going west, there's already 2 bus rapid transit lanes. That's going to look a little different. When it comes to Rotherglen going through to Elizabeth, that's where the pinch point happens, and that's where we have an enormous amount of concern. And we've been, for over a year, Marilyn will, Regional Councillor Crawford will speak to it. We've been dealing with this and trying our best for the last year. I do appreciate progress. I do appreciate what's going on. The 5 lanes, so I'm going to ask you a question. So the 2 lanes going east, if we leave those for a moment, the 2 bus lanes, we'll leave those for a moment within the village. The 1 lane going west, can you speak a little bit about the theory that the 401 opens up when we go west? I believe Mr. Hopper's on the call now, and he spoke to it at another meeting, and how the 401 tightens up going east. And that kind of speaks to, can you speak to that, sir, please?
Certainly. So through the chair, yes. Yeah, so we see a different travel pattern in the morning than we see in the afternoon. So basically we see less westbound traffic on Kingston Road in the morning, because Highway 401 offers an alternate. And as you go further and further west through Durham Region, the highway gets wider and wider. So there tends to be less westbound congestion in the morning. In the afternoon, when traffic is returning out of the city towards Durham Region, the highway gets narrower and narrower as you go further east. And so that causes more congestion, and more people tend to then find alternate routes to the highway, including Kingston Road. So what we see is a disbalance where the westbound traffic in the morning is around 800 to 1,000 cars per hour. In the eastbound direction, it's in the 12 to 1,500 range, simply because of that unbalance. So when in this particular section, what we looked to do was preserve the 2 eastbound lanes to make sure we have the capacity to handle the afternoon eastbound commute.
Okay, and when we're talking about the 5-lane option, which again is 2 going east, the 2 bus lanes in the middle, and then the 1 going west within the village, we do kind of have a sealed situation between the west side of Rotherglen to Elizabeth, or certainly to Church, where there's a curb all the way down. I want to get too detailed here, where that's going to sort of seal that area off. Could we look at, could you speak a little bit about pedestrian crossways, maybe within that span? Because if you look at the map, it's a longer span than it seems to be in other parts of Ajax. Could there be pedestrian crossways there? Other than that, the lights perhaps?
So through the chair, yes, we could look at that. We have looked at other locations of adding an additional signal as well, depending on the traffic flows, and that could be something that's looked at in detailed design. But okay, yes, we could very easily introduce a pedestrian crosswalk mid-block at one of the local unsignalized streets to facilitate additional crossing.
Just trying to explain about businesses on the south side being cut off. But I'll just ask one more question. And again, we could go on all night here. Could you speak to a would-be 6-lane option and the amount of expropriation that could happen if that was to be? I understand you're presenting a 5-lane option, and your autonomy is astounding. It is what it is. But could you speak to a 6-lane option and what that would look like in the village, and what kind of impact it would have in the village if that was to happen hypothetically, please?
Certainly. So through the chair, we have looked at the impacts of a 6-lane option. So essentially, with the 5-lane option and with the sidewalks and the active transportation we're providing, we really are using the entire designated road right of way. So to get a 6 lane, we need an additional 3 to 3.5 meters of property off one side or the other. So when we look, for instance, if we take all of that off the north side by saying, well, St. George's Cemetery is a fixed point, and we have a new development at the southeast corner of Church at 599 Kingston. So let's look at taking everything off the north side. When we see between Rotherglen and Church, that looks to us like it's going to affect 22 homes, to the point where we would have the sidewalk either so close you'd be able to shake hands out the front window, or in some cases the sidewalk would be inside the house. So we believe there are about 22 properties and one business that is a full property taking, because we would need to demolish a lot of those buildings to make room for it. So if we were to look at the south side of the street, we see about 14 buildings plus the new development at 599 Kingston, which would be affected. So about 14 structures on the south side where we likely have to do full takings of the property.
Okay, I have lots more. I'll stop and throw it to, well, back to you, Mayor Collier. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford was next.
Thank you very much. I see that David Hopper and Matthew made it out of Whitby in one piece.
More or less, yes. Thank you.
Well, I hope this is a little bit calmer. I was wondering if you could tell me the projected ridership, has it been adjusted or accounted for the pandemic, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic? I know in a normal world, we would not even be asking these questions, but because so many people are working from home at this point, do you really see that ridership? And also, let's face it, people are afraid of each other. So do you see ridership as really getting back to what normal would have been in the next few years? And how do you predict that? How do you predict that?
So through the chair, we've been looking at that very carefully, because you're right. A lot of transit systems have taken a pretty severe ridership hit during the pandemic. So today we actually commissioned a survey throughout the entire Greater Golden Horseshoe to a number of households and firms, as well as higher education institutions, to see what they expect the future to be like. So how many people expect to be teleworking, how much, where are they working today, what types of commutes were they doing? So we've already done that outreach to start to quantify, so without a crystal ball, but to bring a bit of evidence of what are the firms making any different decisions? Are residents making any different decisions? And today the results of the survey show that we're expecting that telework will have an impact that we quantify as about 20%, a 20% impact on ridership, but mostly focused on, I would say, the white collar downtown residents. So primarily affecting the rail service, and not this type of service along the BRT. Along a route like this one, because of the distribution of employment along the route and the nature of these jobs, so more service sector, more that require physical presence, when it's commercial, all that, we actually expect the ridership more to drop in about of a 10% range. 10% it's a big challenge in the region that's stagnating. In a region that's rapidly growing like Durham, it's 3 years, 4 years of growth. So it's actually going to be there. It will be caught up very quickly because the region is still growing very dynamically. We know there's a bunch of factors that will influence that, but we're confident that even though it might shift things by 3-4 years in the future, it's still very important to invest in this project today, because that will be that drop will be more than compensated by the growth of the region. And that there will be some detailed numbers provided in the business case to do that, because that's you've asked the question, we're hearing it more and more across the region, a lot of questions which are very legitimate, and so we'll include that to make sure that we're showing you what the potential impacts of the pandemic are based on that evidence that we've gathered in the last few months.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Moore briefly touched on the 6-lane option. We know that the full 6 lanes we're not going to get back just because of what you talked about with acquisitions. But I think we did gain in this whole year. I think we gained a few meters from was it Rotherglen, or is it from Westney through Rotherglen? I think we gained something there.
Yeah, through the chair. So we've, so I mean, listening to the community and to councillors to and expressing some concerns and some and also just telling us about what are the important connectors and you know, looking at Rotherglen and understanding how what its role is to really connect with some residential neighborhoods to the north and to the south. We've worked on the design to bring that merging of lanes from 6 to 5, which in the initial design that's are still on the website, it's still east of Rotherglen, so it's just after Wesney. Now we pushed it further west so we can bring the 6 lanes continuously through the Rotherglen intersection, and then so that would enable basically that full existing capacity today to reach Rotherglen and then to connect north or south there. And then the narrowing to 5 lanes would happen west of that. So that's a bit of a difference that I think will just helps with the connectivity through to Rotherglen and the neighborhoods that are alongside that north-south connector.
So we've been talking with our residents, and basically we're saying, oh, you know, it's 10 years down the road. But the reality is we're going to start to see some movement on this very quickly. I think it's is it 2024? The region will start through a funding. Okay, I think it was ISEP. Was it ISEP funding? Yeah. They are going to be starting from Galea to Harwood, and the transit lines go down the middle through that portion, and then they will go from Galea to Alexander Landing, putting the transit down the middle, correct? And then by 2025, I believe you said, it starts from Salem to Westney. Is that correct? No, Harwood to Salem. Is that right, David?
So through the chair, construction on the Harwood to Galea section will start in 2022, late 2022, and be completed late 2023. Then we'll go from Galea to Alexander Crossing, and then our final segment will be from Westney to Harwood. Westney to Harwood is 2025 to 2027 construction.
And that means that all the transit goes down the center.
Correct.
And during that construction, is that where you're also going to be adjusting the bike lanes?
Yes, we will be building off-road cycle tracks.
Okay. And I know that we talked about this I'm pretty sure you can say this. The experience that Ward 1 and former Ward 3 had with the Westney widening and bus lanes was not pleasant. It was a 2, if not 3-year project. Do we anticipate that kind of length of time on this one?
So we did implement some lessons learned from the previous BRT construction, in that all of our contractors moving forward had to go through a pre-qualifying. So we've created a registry of shortlisted of preferred contractors to hopefully avoid issues like that in the future.
Beautiful. That would make it life very, well, much easier anyway. So funded, we are from Westney right through to Alexander Landing. What you're not funded for is the Pickering Village piece, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You heard the impact on the heritage piece was probably the most important. It came from the Pickering Board of Trade. I believe that MP Mark Collins' office mentioned the same thing in a letter to you. I know we had a resolution from Ajax Council. How can you assure us that our heritage area will continue to be a heritage look?
Through the chair, maybe to start on that, I think the most important piece for us is, and that's, you know, looking at through experience on other similar projects, the first most important piece is to make sure that the design of the streetscape design is consistent along the alignment. So getting to as close as possible of uniform treatment, comfortable sidewalks. When there's room to implement a boulevard with some plantings, add that, just to provide consistent, kind of clean, neutral design. Because often what really, I would say, impedes the perception of our heritage district is when you have a lot of different variants of streetscape design along a heritage strip. So that consistency actually brings a lot of quality and will help to underline that. David, I know you have a few examples that you could bring to support that.
Yeah, so we think the widened sidewalks, the improved sidewalks will help with pedestrianization. The stop itself will actually help more people be able to get to the center of the Heritage Village without having to drive and find somewhere to park. So we're looking at streetscaping, as Matthew mentioned. The 5-lane solution does fit within the road allowance that is there. So we're not looking at major impacts to the heritage features, other than there are 2 buildings in the southwest corner of Church and Dundas that we need to sort out, or Church and Kingston that we need to sort out, sorry. But we think that having the pedestrianization of there are features we can add to the stop itself that can help highlight for people who are riding through on the bus what the heritage that's being celebrated there. So we're looking at how the stop design can help contribute to the local neighborhood. We do know that there are places where we are widening along the corridor where we're having to remove trees. So there's opportunities to look for enhanced tree planting in the village and other areas to help augment the character. So we think when we add all of these things together, we can actually use this project to help enhance the heritage character of the neighborhood and make it a more vibrant public space.
So the 2 buildings that I think it's at the southwest corner, is that right? Where I think you need to do something with them because we need to widen the intersection. Is that correct?
Yes, through the chair. So we do need to widen there, and those buildings are too close. So we are looking at a number of options. So we're doing some more heritage work to see whether the building needs to stay, or how it's going to be commemorated, or whether we shift the buildings back a little bit to more line up with the ultimate frontage across the street at 599 Kingston Road, so they maintain the same relationship to the widened road as they have today. So it is the 2 buildings. There's the former grocery store right at the corner, and then there is the former hotel, which today is split into 2 retail units. So those 2 buildings we would need to look at. It's not completely unusual solution, but something a little more radical than landscaping.
And does our staff, thinking more of our heritage staff, would they have an opportunity to have input as to perhaps what that would look like when it comes back?
Through the chair, most definitely. We have engaged staff and the Heritage Committee in terms of looking at the work we've done to date and the recommendations that are moving forward. And yes, we would definitely engage the local community as well as the Heritage Committee and staff moving forward to find the best way to address those 2 sites.
Okay, so I think the last question that I had was around the cycle. I didn't really see a slide that showed what the cycling would look like along Highway 2, and I realize I think it's at Rotherglen you divert. Is it?
At Rotherglen, yes, we go up 1 block or down 1 block, and then we work our way across towards Elizabeth Street before we rejoin to a widened bridge across Duffins Creek.
Okay.
There just isn't physically room to have the cycling facility immediately adjacent to the sidewalks and the BRT lanes through that stretch. So what we've opted to do is work with the town's plan to make sure that we're consistent with the planning work that's already been done and being done in terms of making sure these parallel routes are as close as possible and tie into all of the other facilities that the town is working on.
So you don't have a slide on the actual look of Highway 2 on the cycling path, right? You don't, like I saw the kind of overview of it, but I didn't see like specific.
I'm not sure which rendering made it into the final version of this presentation, being the 55th we've given since Christmas time, but we do have renderings on the website that show the intent. say west of Elizabeth Street and east of Rotherglen would be you would have the regular roadway, and then you climb up at the curb. There would be a boulevard. Then you would have the cycling facilities, and then you would have the sidewalks behind that. So the intent is for the cycling to be up at curb height rather than down at traffic level, and between the sidewalk and the curb of the road. So there are some other renderings we can show you.
Okay. I just had another question and it's left me. Okay. Thank you. This is going to move faster than I had thought. So it seems like there'll be, as the facilities continue to build up and moved into the center, then until the funding is established for the village, I take it they go back out onto the side. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. They'll go back to curbside operation the way they are today. So in the early designs, we need to look at what that transition looks like to make sure we provide service at all the way along the corridor, but that will be part of the next stage of work.
Well, I know that Ajax has 3 of the most dangerous intersections, I think, in Durham, as pointed out through Vision Zero. And so I know that they were looking at dedicated left-hand turn lanes anyway, prior to this project. So I'm guessing that the road people at Durham are probably very happy about the fact that this is coming anyway. And so it forces it to happen sooner than later. And you're right, the dedicated left-hand turn lanes, I don't get U-turns, but like I'm sure that there'll be some sort of educational piece around that. That'll be extremely new for Durham. But I'm hoping that it will help to make our intersections safer, if nothing else.
So through the chair, that has been found on the Viva system along Highway 7, where they've seen a reduction between 50 and 74% in the number of collisions happening along that corridor. So we do group the left turns and the U-turns, so where they're at controlled movements instead of having permissive turns across traffic in the opposing direction. The other benefit at the major roads as well is that there is a BRT stop. So there is actually an island refuge in the middle of the road. So if people who have trouble crossing as quickly, can't get all the way across in one stage, they do have a refuge in the middle of the road where they'll be protected to wait for the second stage to cross the road. And also people coming off the bus will have somewhere safe to wait in the middle of the road while they wait for their turn to the crosswalk to get out to the curb. So we do see, and also eliminating channelized right turns and pork chop islands as a way to make the intersections more urban. So we are looking to create a more urban streetscape and looking at how we use all of those features to make it safer for all road users.
Thank you.
And through the chair, just on the perception with the painted red bus lanes as well as the platforms as the intersections, the perception for the driver will be that it won't be a flat out piece of asphalt they can drive through, because the wider your perception is, the faster you drive through these intersections. So because you'll have a bit more visual separation of the lanes, that will narrow down the driver's focus, and it usually it has a direct impact on slowing down drivers at the intersections.
Okay, thank you very much for answering my questions. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any further questions by members of council? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation, everyone. Moving on to our last presentation, we have Mr. Renil Fernando on let me just find the construction update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Through the mayor, good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm pleased to present to you the 2021 capital projects update. Trails, parks, and playgrounds. The Rotary Park Boardwalk. This project includes the installation of 136 meters of metal and wood boardwalk and a new section of trail adjacent to the existing playground. Majority of the work has been completed with restoration work currently in progress. The boardwalk is scheduled to be open to the public by the end of June. Duffins Bay Trail paving. Through the annual trail assessment program, the segments identified in the diagram were considered as high priority for the maintenance. Work includes removal of the existing trails, installation of a new 3-meter trail, and 3 new benches. A 15-meter segment of the Trans-Canada Trail adjacent to the Duffins Creek was washed out due to a severe weather event in January 2020. At that time, the town of Ajax operations staff temporarily closed the trail to mitigate any potential public risk. Since then, the town has partnered with the TRCA to develop a permanent solution for the washout, which is scheduled to commence in June 2021, pending the ICIP grant fund approval. To mitigate any potential risk to the public in the short term, the washout segment was temporarily filled in until the permanent solution can be implemented. Staff will coordinate with corporate communications to ensure that the public and council are notified of the expected timelines to complete the work. The Annie Crescent pedestrian bridge has been closed due to the same weather event in January 2020. A structural assessment has been completed and reported that the bridge is structurally sound in its current condition. The detailed design for the repair work has been completed through a consultant, and staff are in the process of awarding the contract as emergency work. Staff understand that the immediate need is public safety and to provide safe access for pedestrians and cyclists. Staff will coordinate with corporate communications to ensure that the public and council are notified of the expected timelines to complete the work. Staff are also working with TRCA's erosion risk management team to develop a long-term sustainable solution for this bridge. Westney Road Parkette Walkway. The work includes a 2.4-meter wide trail connection from Fence Street to Westney Road. This will provide a connection to the future trail along Westney Road through the Region of Durham's Westney Road widening project. The Bailey Street multi-use trail construction. The scope of this project includes the construction of a new 1-kilometer long multi-use path from Harwood Avenue to Salem Road on the north side of Bailey Street and cross rides for cyclists at Bircher Road. The project is expected to commence in the summer of 2021 and completion by the end of the year. Staff will coordinate with the corporate communications to ensure that the public is notified. Paradise Park Washroom. This is the installation of a 2-unit self-cleaning smart washroom at Paradise Park. The project includes a paved seating area, lighting, and landscaping. The washroom unit is scheduled to be delivered and installed tomorrow, June the 22nd. The remaining work is to be completed by the summer 2021. As part of the CSA guidelines and the Region of Durham health standards, playground structures have life expectancy of 15 to 20 years. Through condition assessments, Roland Michener Park has been identified for an upgrade. The scope of this project includes the replacement of the existing playground equipment, landscape improvements, new site furniture, LED lighting, and drainage improvements. Expected completion for this project is fall 2021. Playground drainage, Westney Woods Parkette. Through the town's annual infrastructure inspection program, Westney Woods Parkette has been identified for drainage improvements as well as the replacement of the engineered wood play surface. This project is scheduled to be completed in the fall. Similar to the Westney Woods Parkette improvements, John A. Murray Park has also been identified for drainage improvements, as well as a replacement of the engineering wood play surface. This project is scheduled to be completed in the fall as well. We also have a number of ongoing design projects. The neighborhood street lighting improvement design. Design includes the removal and replacement of the existing street lights in the Southwood Park neighborhood. Streetlight wiring replacement in the Lake Vista neighborhood. The design includes the replacement of buried streetlights wiring due to age and deterioration. The design is scheduled to be complete in the fall of 2021. As indicated in the 2019 Municipal Structure Inspection Study, the Church Street Road Bridge over Duffins Creek is due for maintenance. The detailed design includes the repair of various components of the bridge, such as piers, retaining walls, embankments, crack sealing, and patching. The design is expected to be completed in the summer of 2022. Also indicated in the 2019 Municipal Structure Inspection Study, Footbridge 112 along the waterfront trail is due for maintenance. The detailed design includes the repair of various components of the bridge, such as floor beams, deck components, repainting of the steel deck to prevent corrosion. Expected completion is at the end of 2021. Construction projects for 2021. The 2021 annual road resurfacing program includes the following roads: Hayward Crescent from Rollo Drive to Rollo Drive, Leach Drive from Rollo Drive to Hayward Crescent, and Ridley Drive from Ravenscroft Road to Adley Crescent. The work includes removal and replacement of sections of concrete curb and sidewalk, removal and replacement of existing asphalt and new pavement markings. Majority of this project has now been completed. Restoration work is currently in progress. Fuller Road reconstruction from Westney Road to Clements Road. The work includes full-depth road reconstruction, including new curb and sidewalk, and the installation of share the road stencils for cyclists. The town has also partnered with the region of Durham for waterman replacement work. The project will commence in spring of 2021 and be completed by the end of 2021. A road closure with access to local traffic is anticipated for this project. Staff will coordinate with corporate communications to ensure that the public and local businesses are notified. Admiral Road reconstruction from Roosevelt Avenue to Perry Road. The work includes full-depth road reconstruction, new curbs, sidewalk repair, and new storm sewer. The town has also partnered with the region of Durham for the replacement of the water main. A road closure with access to local traffic is also anticipated for this project, and staff will coordinate with corporate communications to make sure that the public is notified prior to work. Roslyn Road reconstruction from Church to Westney. The first phase of the work includes the relocation of the existing utilities to allow for the road work widening. These utilities include Lexicon, Rogers, Bell, and Enbridge. This work will commence in June and expected to be completed in the fall of 2021. Upon completion of the relocation work, phase 2 of the road reconstruction will commence. The work includes a new 4-lane urban cross-section with a center turning lane. The section between Church Street and Ravenscroft will include a sidewalk on the north side, a multi-use path on the south side with on-road bike lanes. The section between Ravenscroft and Westney will include a multi-use path on the north side and south side to align with the cross-section of the next segment between Westney Road and Lake Ridge Road. The widening will also include new LED streetlights, new traffic signals at Ravenscroft, Carter Bennett, and new pedestrian signals at Harkins. The project will be completed in stages, allowing for through traffic. The project is expected to be awarded in the fall of 2021, with the majority of the work commencing in the spring of 2022. The project is expected to be completed by the fall of 2022. Staff will work with corporate communications to ensure that the public is notified in a timely manner. Bartlett parking lot construction. The parking lot will be reconstructed with new permeable pavers to improve stormwater management. The driveway entrance and the trail connection at the south end of the parking lot will be repaved. The parking lot will have 28 spaces and 2 accessible spaces. The work will include landscaping, a new double barrier gate, and a new entry feature. The Town Hall campus LED upgrades. This project is to upgrade the Town Hall parking lot lighting to new LED lighting. Accessible pedestrian signals. The scope of this project includes design and installation of accessible pedestrian signal controls At various intersections, the work will be completed by the Region of Durham to meet the AODA standards. Traffic signal replacement. The scope of this project includes removal and replacement of existing LED traffic signal heads at various intersections. This work is to be completed by the Region of Durham. Retaining wall replacement. Through the 2017 retaining wall condition assessment report, it was determined that the town-owned retaining walls adjacent to 70 Reed Drive and 58 Wright Crescent had degraded significantly and required replacement. This project is scheduled to be completed in the fall. As a part of the greenhouse gas reduction initiatives, the town is installing one dual port electric vehicle charging station at the Operations Center parking lot and 2 dual port charging stations at the Town Hall parking lot. This project is partially funded through the Zero Emissions Vehicle Infrastructure Program. The installation is expected to be completed by the fall of 2021. We also have building maintenance projects. The Ajax Community Center Pad 2 lobby and surrounding floor replacement. The flooring has reached the end of its life cycle and requires replacement. During construction, the area will be closed off to users, but all fire exits will remain accessible for emergency use. The project is scheduled to commence in the summer and completed by the fall of this year. Staff will work with corporate communications to provide public notices prior to construction. The ACC pool solarium glass replacement. The existing pool solarium glass panels have been in service for 30 years and reached the end of its useful life. During the installation, the exercise room will be closed to users to mitigate any injury to public. The project is scheduled to commence in the fall and be completed by the end of the year. Staff will work with corporate communications to provide notifications prior to construction. The existing hot water and heating boilers have reached the end of their life cycle and need replacement. Construction is to commence in the summer of 2021 and be completed before the start of the heating season. There are no impacts to the public and there are no closures required for this work. This project involves the replacement of the MCC pool filtration system pumps. The replacement system is highly efficient and will allow for greater automation and control over the water required for the pools. Construction is scheduled to commence in the summer of 2021 and be completed by the fall. During the upgrade, the hot tub and pool will be closed to the public. Through this project, the Ajax Council Chambers will receive a new modernized audiovisual solution allowing for professional quality presentations, online streaming capabilities, and reduce meeting interruptions due to technology failure. This project is scheduled to commence in the fall and be completed by the end of the year. During construction, council chambers will be closed for the public use. The MCC rooftop condenser units, the 2019 energy audit identified the replacement of the 5 rooftop units at the MCC due to age and the phasing out of the R22 refrigerant. Construction is scheduled to commence in the summer of 2021 and expected to be completed in the fall. No closures are required as this work will be completed off-season. Condition assessments. The condition assessments of parks, walkways, parking lots, sport fields, streetlights, and poles will allow asset management to provide recommendations for maintenance and replacement based on priority. The assessment is also required to meet the Ontario Regulation 588-17, Asset Management Planning for Municipal Infrastructure. The project is scheduled to commence in the summer of 2021 and be completed by early 2022. This project involves the condition assessment of all town-owned acoustic barriers and entry features. The assessment will provide recommendations for maintenance and rehab as required through asset management. The assessment is also a requirement of the Ontario Regulation 588-17. This project is scheduled to commence in the summer of 2021 and be completed by the end of 2022. There are some region of Durham projects that I'll talk about. The region of Durham has undertaken a project to replace the water main along the section of Pickram Beach Road adjacent to the main road south of Ford. The region is anticipating a contract award in the fall of 2021, with construction commencing in the spring of 2022. This project will take 3 months to complete from the time of award. The town will coordinate with the region of Durham to notify the public through our corporate communications. The region of Durham is undertaking a project to reconstruct 2 kilometers of Westney Road between Roslyn Road to 300 meters north of Taunton Road. The work includes a new 4-lane urban cross-section with a center turning lane, an improved storm drainage system, a multi-use path on the east side, and new LED lighting. The work will include the rebuild of 3 intersections at Williamson Drive, Atherton Drive, and Taunton Road. The work is scheduled to commence in the fall of 2021 and expected to be completed in the fall of 2022. The town will coordinate with the region of Durham to provide public information through corporate communications. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I had to move the visual off screen to see the presentation, so I didn't see any hands. I did get one request by text from Councillor Crawford, and I see Councillor Lee next, and then Dies.
Holy cow, that is a huge report. I was trying to write down questions as you were going by. Okay, so can we go back to Ridley? Ridley, it appears to be completed at this point, but there is a huge mound of dirt and the cones are all up. I don't exactly know when all that gets cleaned up, but I noticed there's a mound of dirt on one of the residents' yard, essentially. And anything that's dug up, do you put fresh sod down, or do you just slap down the stuff that you dug up?
No, through the mayor. First of all, the restoration work is currently in progress, which means all that work, all that excess soil or whatever that they've put on the sides will be all cleaned up. That's what they're doing now. And in terms of restoring and putting new sod down, it's not they don't use existing sod. What they do is they put down topsoil and put fresh sod down. I think the best time to do that is kind of in the fall. So we have to talk to the contractor and see when they're planning on doing that.
Okay, so Rob, when you get questions about that, you'll know the answer. I am so very pleased to know that Roslyn will not be widened at the same time of Westney. And I'm extremely excited about Westney being widened, because that means that we are going to see sidewalks between Williamson and Taunton Road, which are so desperately needed. So that is a project that I think is probably, we thought was going to happen 10 years ago. And here we are 10 years later and it's getting done now. So that's amazing. Can you tell me, Brennan Drive Road, can't remember if it's a drive or a road. Is it not projected in 2022 to be resurfaced?
You know what, I have to, through the mayor, can I get back to you on that one? Because I don't have that information in front of me. But I can jot it down and give you a quick call on that.
Yeah, and I'm going to be so excited when the Elizabeth Bridge is finished. That's all I can say. Thank you, Vernell, and thank you, Your Worship.
You're welcome.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Bernil, for the presentation. So something conspicuous in its absence was, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's no road calming in terms of construction that we're doing. And I remember Councillor Crawford brought this up previously of just, there was road calming we had approved our first term of council, and I'm vaguely certain that has still not been done. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'd love to be wrong in this case. But this may not be the presentation to ask, but was there any road calming construction scheduled for the rest of 2021?
Through the mayor to Councillor Lee, I think Mr. John Grieve is on the line. He may be able to better answer any projects that's related to road calming.
Yes, so through the chair to Regional Councillor Lee, yes, traffic calming is not under Renale's purview, it's under mine. So my group, we do still have the 12 traffic calming projects that are scheduled to be completed this year. We're in the process of finalizing those designs. The tenders will be put out shortly, with construction taking place once a contractor can be secured. So those are still on track to be completed this year.
So Mr. Grieve, thank you for that. It's good to know because yeah, it was very alarming not to see anything on this presentation, different sub presentation. If you would though, could you please email council that list of 12 just to remind us? It'd be a good refresher to make sure we know which roads are being calmed, and then we're ready for the next capital budget to request whatever we feel it needs to. So that was my question, Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff, and thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dice.
Wasn't going to work for me. Thank you very much, Mayor Collier. I had a question about the bridge extension, the boardwalk. I was at Rotary Park today, and it looked to me like the photo you showed, it just looks like it goes right up to the top of bank or to the top of the hill. But I noticed there was also an extension that went sort of west, a little bit west and north, that went around the playground, and you are making a trail that goes out to the road as part of the entrance road out that take you in and out of the park. Am I correct on that?
I have Andrew Jackson on the line. He's the project manager for the project. Maybe he can answer those detailed questions. Andrew?
Thank you.
Through the mayor to Councillor Dice. I'm not clear on your question. There is, as part of the project, part of the scope of the work was to realign the Trans-Canada Trail from the waterfront trail through the area of the playground. It's a short section, and it connects up to the existing Trans-Canada Trail, which is already in place. So there was a conflict between the trail and the playground. So we tried to mitigate that by relocating that small section of trail to the west, and then putting some connections to the playground in with P gates.
So if I'm looking at this bridge, I'm looking toward Rotary, it also goes a little bit off to the left.
Yes.
Short jog. Okay. And then you're making a new trail, am I correct, out to that roadway?
There's a new section of trail from the waterfront trail north around the edge of the playground to make it safer.
Okay. So my question is then, I'm going to assume that, you know, people, pedestrians and cyclists will have an option whether to go straight or a little bit to the left. And will they be, for cyclists in particular, what will be the signage to get back on the trail? Where are you detouring them to?
There will be signage southbound on the realigned trail with a stop sign and stop bar that will meet at the T intersection between the two trails, the waterfront and the Trans-Canada. There's also slow down signage where the P gates are going in. So we do have some trail traffic calming with the use of P gates. Other than that, there's the existing signage for the Trans-Canada Trail and Waterfront Trail that will be reinstated.
So if you take that jog to the left, to the west, when you're coming off the bridge, where will you go from there to reconnect with the trail?
Due north, it just goes up about 100 meters or so to the existing trail that's there now.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Bowers, go ahead.
Councillor Tyler was next, and then Councillor.
Thank you. Good job at the Church Street Trail washover or washout repair. It's good that got done quickly. Can you just, I don't mean to be gotcha here, but the Annie Street pedestrian bridge, I know it's coming. It says commencement spring 2021. Can you tell us if there are construction vehicles there? Like are residents, if they get to the area now, do they see anything more than those roadblock? Is it up and running? I'm thinking it says project commencement spring 2021, project completion summer 2021. Is it happening now, or when will, if it isn't, when will it start?
Through the mayor to Councillor Moran, we did meet with, so the design has been completed, as I said. And we have two contractors in mind. We have met with them today on site, and the contract award is imminent. Most likely it's going to be this week. I'm thinking maybe tomorrow that we'll award the contract to begin the work. So I'm hoping that you'll begin to see some activity this week in that location.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the update in the report, Renell. Very much appreciated. Lots of work going on. And thanks for that answer about the Paradise washrooms. I was wondering when that was going to happen. So they're coming tomorrow, and they'll be installed. So will they be up and running like tomorrow, or when will they be operational?
Through the mayor to Councillor Bauer, the washroom is getting delivered tomorrow. So it's a prefab unit that's coming from, I believe it's from Montreal, from Urban Blue. Yeah. They'll unload it tomorrow and put it in place, and then they have to make all the connections, all the plumbing connections underneath. Once all that's done, yeah, then it'll be up and running and should be able to be used. And then the remaining work will be just the restoration, the landscaping, and all that. So we're expecting that by the end of this month, it should be up and running.
Great. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then just a question about that Church Street Trail washout repair. I know Councillor Tyler Moore just asked about it, but there's a note here that it says it's pending Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant fund approval. So do we have any update for that?
Yes, we do. And I think the best person is Ms. Cruciano. I think she is on the call.
Thank you.
I am. Thank you very much, Councillor Bauer, for the question and through the mayor. So this project was, as far as we are aware, still pending. We have some information that we've received confidentially from the federal government that council was advised about. And there are a few sort of approvals that need to be sorted through with staff in terms of Indigenous consultation and our partnership with the TRCA. So staff are working through those steps with the federal government, and pending their successful completion, we expect that grant funding will be flowing relatively soon, if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Fernando, for the presentation.
Thank you.
That concludes this section of the agenda. Let me go back to find where we were. Moving on to items of correspondence. Just let me find the sheet for this. I have a motion to add one item of correspondence, moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Tyler Moore, and that the rules of procedure be suspended in order to introduce an item of correspondence from the Ontario Big City Mayors. This is, as a walk-on, requires 2/3, so that's 5 of 7. Those in favor of suspending the rules to introduce an additional piece of correspondence? I see all hands. That carries unanimously. Thank you, folks. And that is the piece of correspondence from Ontario Big City Mayors from our meeting on Friday. And I do apologize for the lateness, but it just did come out today at about 5 o'clock. On correspondence, shoot, it's hard going back and forth here.
I have one, Your Worship.
Yep. Just 1 second, Councillor Tyler.
Sorry.
You are pulling the item on the HSDR, correct?
Correct.
Are there any other polls by any member of council on the items of correspondence? Okay, so other than the Ontario Big City Mayors piece and the Humane Society of Durham Region piece, I have moved by Councillor Bauer and second by, oh, wait a minute. Yep. Sorry. I made a mistake. Just 1 second. I reversed these. So we'll do this one, moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Dyes. That the report dated June 21st, 2021, containing items of correspondence be received for information, which is the balance. Those in favor of receipt of the balance of correspondence? None opposed. That is carried. Councillor Tyler Moore, go ahead on the HSDR piece, please.
Oh, thank you, Worship. As I always say, just quickly, so HSDR, which is Humane Society of Durham Region, does work across Durham Region. They have a proposed animal service managed program by the Humane Society of Durham for the town of Ajax specifically. So they've approached us, spoke to us briefly, and now there's a report to staff from them. And since that time, so staff is going to be reviewing it. They also added a little sweetener to the pot, and I don't think it's part of this officially, but they would like to amend the proposal to Ajax so that all fees in the first year would be waived. This is a sort of a deep dive. There could be a deep dive in all the information on this, but they do good work, and they have a proposal in right now with the town of Ajax to see if they could take over animal control. And again, there's all kinds of details there with bylaw. Maybe, Mayor, you could speak to it a bit better than I can, but they did want to add that they are willing to add to their proposal that all fees would be gone in the first year. They believe in what they do. They're all volunteers, and that's where that's sitting right now.
Councillor Tyler Moran, are you requesting that we refer this to staff to be considered as part of that process?
I am. I'd like to move that the proposal be referred to LIS staff for review and consideration, and that staff be directed to bring forward a report in the fall of 2020, or sorry, fall of 2021, I think that should say, with recommendations. And
That's where
looking
I
forward
thought
to
you were
seeing
going.
that.
Can I get a
Yeah.
second for that, please? Second by Councillor Khan. Anyone wish to speak on that referral? Seeing no hands. Those in favor of the referral? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries.
Thank you, Worship.
On the big city mayors, I did circle. I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with this. I guess I'll move it. I'll turn the chair over to Councillor Lee. This item of correspondence, and the clerk is putting up just the relevant piece because there's 4 parts to this. And the part that I wanted us to endorse is the part that speaks to the infrastructure funding flexibility. And this is a motion that I brought to Big City Mayors on Friday that stemmed from our council meeting last week regarding a stormwater management and a stormwater management fee potentially that we're looking at, and the restrictions that we found out about where we can't put this on our tax bill, and we have to go through the region or through our energy or electricity provider, which both have said no. So we don't have the tools to be able to do this, and we need to be able to have the tools to be able to do this. So what we've requested from the big city mayors, which is a much bigger voice than just a local municipality, to work with AMO and try and come up between the big city mayors and Association of Municipalities of Ontario and the province of Ontario with some ways to maybe tweak the Municipal Act to make it easier for municipalities to collect these service charges should we need to do it. So I will move, and I'll need a seconder just to ask that this be endorsed.
So I see Councillor Tyler Moran as a seconder. And Mayor, did you want to speak on this further?
Well, I do intend to try and bring this to, I wanted council to endorse it today, which is why the urgency, 1, because this is the last meeting before the summer break, and I don't want this to wait to September, but 2, I do want to try and bring this under other business at the region on Wednesday, because for the same reason, it's our last meeting. And I do want to see if we can get council to request that regional staff work with us and other municipalities at seeing if we can put together some sort of way to put fees on the water bill. So to do that, I want to be able to go with the big city mayor's motion as well as the town's endorsement. So thank you, Councillor Tyler Moore, for seconding, and I appreciate everybody's support. Thank you.
Councillor Tyler Moran, as the seconder, is there anything you wanted to add?
Not my area of expertise, but I agree with it's got to be done soon because again, I'm glad we're addressing this now before summer break, as this would be time sensitive. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Any other members of council wish to speak or questions? No, we will call to vote then. All in favor? Opposed? It passes unanimously. Handing back the chair to the mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Moving on to reports, we have Community Affairs and Planning Committee report. So let me catch up with my council resolutions. I need a mover and a seconder on the CAP report of June 7th. Oops, let me get my screen back on, please. Moved by Councillor Khan, second by Councillor Bauer. Oh, sorry, I already have this. Sorry, Khan and Dyes. Moved by Councillor Khan, second by Councillor Dyes. That the Community Affairs and Planning Committee report dated June 7th be adopted. Any questions or comments on the CAP report? Being none, those in favor? I see all hands. That carries. Moving on to the General Government Committee report, Special General Government Committee meeting of May 31st, 2021. I have moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Bauer, that the Special General Government Committee report dated May 31st, 2021 be adopted. Any questions or comments on the special meeting? Those in favor? I see all hands. That carries. Moving on to the General Government Committee meeting of June 14th, moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Tyler Morin, that the General Government Committee report dated June 14th be adopted. Questions or comments on the June 14th report? Seeing none, those in favor? I see all hands. That's carried. Moving on to summary of advisory committee reports, moved by Councillor Dyes, second by Councillor Khan, that the summary of advisory committee activities report dated June 21st, 2021, as attached to the meeting agenda be received for information, and that the recommendations contained therein be referred to staff where applicable. Any questions or comments on the advisory committee reports? Being none, those in favor of receipt? I see all hands. That's carried. On departmental reports now. Mr. Romanowski, Director of Planning Development Services, and Mr. Scopacasa, Senior Planner, and on the PDS 2021-30 CPSP Ajax Nominee Inc. Amazon Fulfillment Center. Mr. Romanowski and staff, whenever you're ready. Actually, before we go on to departmental reports, I think we should probably, we're 2 hours into this meeting now. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? So we'll call a 5-minute break. We'll be back here at 9:06, please.
Mr. Mayor, we are live again.
Thank you. Mr. Romanowski and your staff, whenever you're ready, please go ahead with departmental report 7.4.1.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We don't have a presentation this evening for this item. It's in relation to the construction work that's occurring out on Rosslyn Road and on Salem Road for the Amazon Fulfillment Center. This is the final agreement that kind of establishes, or it does establish, the repayments and credits or incentives that would be paid back to Amazon, or I guess I think the agreement's under the CPSP Ajax Nominee Inc. Name. Because these works were in relation to the Rosslyn Road EA, as well as, those future works after the EA and design work were done. And the timing of the actual capital project for doing that work was out sometime. This development brought forward those works sooner. So we need to enter into certain agreements to outline basically the repayment plan for the works that are being done. Mr. Scopacasa is on the line, as well as Julie Mepham. They were the primary staff working on the agreement with Blackwood. And I can turn it over to them, or if we want to just go right into questions, maybe that might make the most sense.
Just a quick question that maybe help clarify, because I'm not fully understanding this. So is this funds that we have collected, DCs that we have collected, that have now been determined that we weren't really entitled to because this is more of a shared project? Am I understanding it correctly? Oh, Ms. Bell,
shared in the sense that we were eventually going to do the work, but because the work is being advanced by this party, and Director Valentin's there, she can definitely jump in and explain the finances of it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we would collect DC funds for from the development itself, and the funds were to be used to widen Rosslyn Road in a future date. So what we're proposing through this agreement is a DC credit. So instead of receiving the money and paying it out, it would just be a credit towards the construction work.
Okay, because they've already paid for the work.
They are in the process of paying for the work. The work's not completed yet.
That was my understanding. Any questions from members of council? Hearing, seeing none. Great explanation. Thank you. We have the resolution. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Council Lee, second by Council Bauer. So let me bring this up. Moved by Council Lee, second by Council Bauer, that the town solicitor be authorized. Oh boy, this is long. I'm not going to read the whole thing. That the town solicitor be authorized to prepare a construction admin agreement for the Rosslyn Road East improvements identified under the environmental assessment and the Salem Road North multi-use path associated with the subject lands between the town and CPSP Ajax Nominee Inc. substantially in the form as outlined in this report, and the funds and the amounts are listed here from the development charges and the reserve. And that council approved the following funding to be allocated to capital account 1026511. Those in favor of the recommendation of the resolution? Any opposed? None opposed. That's carried. Moving on to departmental reports. 7.4.2 PDS 2021-31 Business Improvement Area Director Appointments, Removals, and Business Improvement Area Comprehensive Review. Mr. Romanowski, please go ahead. Is there a presentation on this, Jeff?
No, sir.
Okay, so does any member of council have any questions on the recommendation? Go ahead, Councilor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say, since I am the council representative currently on the BIA, I'm glad to see that we're looking at this and new members are coming on board, and wanted to say to past members, thank you for your service, and it continues. But I think there could be some improvements made, and I'm glad to see that there will be a review. I don't know if my councillor friend Lisa Bauer would share my sentiment, but yeah, so I'll just say that I'm glad this is happening. Thank you for letting me in, Your Worship.
Yes, I do, Councillor Talamo.
Any other questions to staff before I ask some questions to staff? As stated in the report to Mr. Romanowski, as stated in the report, staff are currently undergoing a review of the BIAs through our economic development. Is that's still ongoing?
Yes, we've just initiated the process.
Okay, and that is going to be completed, anticipated by the end of 2021. Is that still on track?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay. When these BIA members are appointed, if they're appointed, the term would run, I think, concurrent with the term of council, would it not? How long would they be appointed for? Would it be to the end of next year?
That might be, I probably should know that information. I don't know the exact details as the term with regard to the terms of the BIA members. Maybe Alec, or I don't know if Don's on the line, but probably not. I can't remember.
Wonder, would the clerk
I can
know?
speak to that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, so the appointment of BIA directors does run concurrent with the term of council, and then when vacancies arise and are filled by appointments, those appointments also are set to conclude at the end of the term of council.
Okay. Now, my concern is, thank you, Ms. Cooper. Mrs. Cooper, my apologies. My concern is if we appoint new members now, midterm, and the report comes back to council at the end of this year, and I don't know what the report's going to say, and I have no predetermined, but say the report determines that the BIAs are no longer, performing it, or no longer performing what they're intended to do, or no longer relevant, or should be combined, or any number of these things. What happens, or what would nominating or approving these new members today cause any problem to that process of council had to make a decision at the end of this term to disband the BIAs, for instance, based on what comes out of the report? And I'm not saying that, I'm just hypothetical. What would this do? Does this tie our hands in any way?
I don't believe so. Through the chair, well, to the mayor. I think it's just a matter of the process that we have to go through as outlined within the Economic Development Action Plan that was endorsed by this council. And that was the timeline associated with it. So there's a commitment there through that plan to go through that process. And I don't think appointing new members or bringing new members on, especially if they've been considered by their peers at the BIA, fellow directors that are there now, and they brought them forward, I think it would be appropriate. And those are the decisions that have been made by that group and for this group's consideration further.
Well, and thank you, Mr. Romanowski. And that's why I asked this, because in section 2.3, it specifically says council may want to consider whether it's sensible to appoint new members to the BIA boards during the review period. So I asked the question because I don't know. I don't really think so, because we're already halfway through the year and the budgets for the BIAs have been passed. And I think any events or any of the things they want to do have already been put in place. So I don't know that there's going to be really any decisions. The AGMs, I understand, have already been held. I don't know that there's going to be any decisions. So I guess I'm open to my council colleagues' thoughts on whether it would make sense to go ahead with this or whether this should, I don't think this would make any difference if this was deferred until after the report, would it? Mr. Romanowski or Mrs. Cooper?
So to your question, so approving appointments and removing the directors who are no longer serving, to your earlier question, does not bind us in any way. But I think what the report was just flagging for council is that there's a review that's about to be undertaken, and the boards currently, even with the changes that are proposed, or pardon me, without the changes that are proposed this evening, are still able to function from now until the end of the term, given the complements that they already have now. So it's not necessarily it's not necessary that those vacancies be filled immediately in order for the boards to continue functioning. So it's something that council just may want to consider because we do have this review that's underway.
Okay.
I would also add to Director Cooper's statements that I don't think there is a negative impact, just depending on either way that council wants to go. I think it's appropriate, given what I stated before, that their peers within the BI made those decisions to bring those nominations forward.
Okay. The recommendation in this report is to receive for information. So we're not actually being asked to endorse or anything. This is just to be received for information. So we're not actually making any decisions.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just clarify a point there.
Sure.
So there are bylaws proposed on the agenda tonight that would reflect the changes that have been requested by the BIAs. So reflect what those boards would look like if those changes were approved. So there are proposals to remove members that are no longer serving, as well as adding new members to the Pickering Village BIA. Staff do feel it's important that those who are no longer serving on the boards be removed this evening, primarily for the reason that, directors who are serving on boards, that comes with significant liabilities. And so for those that are no longer serving, I think it's incumbent upon the town to clear up our official records to reflect those removals in a timely manner. So the bylaws that are before you tonight should still be approved. If council wishes to amend them such that those names that are proposed to be added are stricken from the bylaws, that's something that could be done tonight.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I'd forgotten about the bylaws there. Okay, that answers my questions then. Thank you. Any other questions from members of council regarding the BIA appointments? Being none, I need a mover and a seconder, please.
Okay, I'm okay. I was just going to ask you had your hand in. I'm okay.
No, you have a question?
Well, I was just going to say that I guess, being in the room, being at the meeting, so the board asked that the new members be added because they thought they would add value. Okay. So that was the sentiment of the BIA board. So I just wanted to inject that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bauer?
I'll just add to that. Thank you, Chair, for the downtown BIA. Same sense that removing some members who do not attend, that does affect quorum for our meetings, and then appointing newer members who are very eager and willing to actively participate in the BIA. I think it's important that they have that opportunity, whether there's a review going on or not.
Okay, and I do agree with Mrs. Cooper's comment that it is important to remove those that are no longer serving and keep that up to date. So that's fine. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Lee. Oh, 1 second. Sorry about that. Let me go back and find this. That this report be received for information. Those in favor? I see all hands. That is carried. And last departmental report, 7.4.3 Ajax Public Library Board Report. Ms. Visser, when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is no presentation
Sorry,
tonight.
my apologies, Ms. Baszler, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is no presentation tonight. The library board and I would like to highlight a number of services that the library has achieved since the beginning of 2021 that align with the Town of Ajax strategic plan, as well as some new and noteworthy projects as listed below, including an update to our makerspace strategy. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from members of council? I just have a couple, Ms. Baszler, on the makerspace. Just, it looks like you've gone your fair way down the road. Have you done any cost estimates yet on that?
No, we have not received all of the cost estimates. We are still building that after identifying some of the equipment, and we have not zeroed in on a preferred location. Once we have a location in mind, we will be looking to put in cost estimates on any renovations or retrofits that are required.
Okay, thank you. I believe when I looked, I'm just trying to find it quickly, at the timeline you had in here, that it was going to be right around like June, July, facility requirements, capital cost evaluation. So those I guess are imminent, since we're near the end of June than the start, right? So
Absolutely, yes.
Go ahead.
Through your worship, absolutely. I'm expecting capital costs to come in July.
So my question is, when this looks like it's done in July, what is the financial process? Because we go through the budget process at the town, and our budget was February, and we wouldn't bring something like this in midterm. Will this go through the budget process and be part of the ask for the library next year?
Through your worship, the library board will need to receive this information at the September board meeting, and pending their approval, it would go through the budget process the same way any other department would.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Those are my questions, and I appreciate the report. Thank you. Anything further from members of council? Can I get a mover and a seconder for the recommendations, please? Moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Lee. I'll do Lee Bauer, since Councillor Lee is the rep. That the Library Services 2021 Spring Update be received for information. Those in favor? I see all hands. That is carried. Thank you, Ms. Baszler. Regional Council reports. Are there any regional council reports? Councillor Crawford, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly report on the recycling lid project, which is, I think I'm deflated on many levels these days. So Regional Council has asked for rescinding of the motion, and apparently 3 points to it. We were supposed to try to get secure a patent. We were supposed to secure naming rights and a bylaw. So the patent apparently is not something that can be achievable. The bylaw was felt by the legal department to be not something that could be enforced. And the third one, no one came forward to put naming rights on the project, which meant that it would have to have been funded through the region. So the good news, if there's any good news in this, is that for residents that would like to have a recycling lid, and I would encourage anybody who would like to have one, the region will have these lids made, and residents will be able to purchase the lids if they would like them, as many lids as they want. It's a great product, and I'm disappointed that we can't actually do this project, because I felt it was really good. It was unique and it was innovative when we dug up the landfill site. So that is where we sit with the recycling lid. As far as Vision Zero goes, I'm not sure if we have, well, maybe Nicole can help me with this one. There was a question around e-bikes. One of the inspectors was thinking about putting their officers on e-bikes as opposed to regular bikes for the summertime, because their bikes are quite heavy. And then when they add all of their equipment on them, it makes it quite difficult and challenging for the police officers to actually ride the bikes. So they were looking to actually try to implement e-bikes into the program. I found out that e-bikes are not allowed on the road unless a municipality has a bylaw that allows them to be on the road. And so that was kind of new news to me. I didn't realize that we needed to pass a bylaw to have e-bikes on the road. I mean, regular bikes can go on the road. So I don't know if Nicole would be able to answer that, or if Mr. Hanna might be on the line.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Through the mayor. Yes, I have discussed this with Mr. Hanna before, but I don't want to give you any wrong information. We're lucky to have Mr. Hanna on the call tonight, actually. So I'll just ask him if he can weigh in on your question.
Okay. Thank you.
Through your worship, that is the first that I've heard of this. I was under the impression that all e-bikes, while on the travel portion of the road, had to obey all Highway Traffic Act legislation.
Yeah, I was surprised at it. I think it's because e-bikes are fairly new in the world of travel, and I always thought they weren't allowed on the sidewalks, that they had to go on the road. So I'm just wondering, Your Worship, I'm looking for direction. Is there a way that I mean, I don't want to make work for people, but I think it's a great idea to have police officers on e-bikes. I think it's a much better form, and the community likes to see them out and around in the community. So is it possible, or do you want me to take that back? I just wanted to confirm or not confirm whether or not this was the case, that you needed a bylaw.
Well, Madam Clerk, what would your recommendation be?
Yeah, so if we could just maybe have a couple days to look into this, and we could send an email to council with whatever we find as far as where and whether e-bikes are permitted.
Okay, that's cool. If that's all right with everyone else, that'd be great. Thank you. I don't think I have anything else to report on. I think that's it for me.
Okay, any other regional council reports? Councillor Dias, Councillor Lee? I'll just follow up on yours, Councillor Crawford. It is very, very disappointing that LID project did not continue. It was such an amazing made in Durham solution, landfill mining of old tires and turning them into these lids, which really help in stopping all the paper and litter blowing all over our streets during collection days for recycling. And we've tried this many times at the region, and there's no appetite, which is really, really unfortunate, because it would be a really proactive thing. But what is most important is that litter cost, region collects the litter and region receives money. Sorry, region collects garbage and recycling, and region receives 55% of our property tax dollars. However, the cost of litter pickup essentially gets downloaded to the local municipality. So that gets put on the back of Ajax residents' municipal tax bill, even though we're not being paid. Well, I guess we are, but it should be part of the other. If the litter was not allowed to blow around, if they couldn't put the bins out the night before, it would be very, very helpful. But we lost that one. So that was really unfortunate, but A for effort. We tried for a long time. I'll just talk quickly about a new initiative for Durham Regional Transit, and that's starting this weekend. Route 224 is going to start servicing Paradise Park and Veterans Point, and as well go up to the Audley Rec Center. And Councillor Brower brought this forward. We talked about it earlier on this year about, again, is there a way to help get people out of their cars? We're seeing more and more people visiting our waterfront and our areas, our naturalized areas and our parks. And we have our new paid parking permit system. So this is just a sort of a great dovetail into that as well, by now offering, if somebody comes in on the GO train, they can take the GO train, they can take the 224 Harwood from the GO train station on weekends. It'll bring in right to Paradise Park or right to Veterans Point. All the buses have bicycle carriers on the front. People can bring their bicycles, they can go down, they can enjoy the waterfront, don't have to pay for parking, and don't have to worry about finding parking because it can get very congested down there. So it's I think a real win-win for everybody. And again, a kind of an Ajax idea that we brought forward to the region. We're able to make it happen at no additional cost to us. And other than the transit fee, but I mean, we didn't have to come up with any funding for the increased level of service. And it will run through till Labor Day. So for the rest of the summer. And I'll open it up if any member of council has any, well, first of all, can I get a mover and a seconder on the regional council reports, please? Moved by Councillor Khan, seconded by Councillor Tyler Morin, that the regional council reports be received. Any question or comments on the regional council reports? Councillor Khan?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, to Regional Councillor Crawford about the back to the lids. That is very disappointing that we won't be getting them. And, you know, our residents are really looking forward to it because it's pretty windy up in the north. You did mention, I think I heard that you said you can still access them for a fee. Can you speak more on that, please?
Yeah, they haven't actually nailed down the cost. They did assure me it would be nominal. So once I have a cost and once we get that information, this has only gone to work, so it'll have to go through regional on Wednesday to make it finalized. I can certainly ask the question again at region to find out if they've come up with a cost, but they did say it would be nominal. And they also, interestingly enough, said they'd only received 20 complaints about litter. But I can't imagine. I think what it is that residents believe that it's the town's responsibility. The town gets all of the complaints, but the region doesn't, so they couldn't justify it. Anyway, just a side note. But I'll let you know for sure when I find out.
Thank you, because there is an appetite for the lids.
Thank you. Yes, I know.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair. That was going to be my new business and announcements at the end of the meeting, but beat me to it. So thank you for that. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on this new this trial bus route, the extension of 224. I think it was a great idea, and I wanted to express my thanks to the staff who helped me liaise with GRT and to Durham Region Transit, being so open to trying this out, and of course accommodating the cost as well. So thank you to you as well, Mayor, for your role as the transit chair. So I'm really excited about it. I hope that people will give it a try and that we'll have some success getting people down to the waterfront without having to take their cars. Thank you.
And you know what I'd like to see next? Is
What?
an autonomous vehicle going back and forth down there. All right, anything further on regional council reports? Hearing, seeing none, the resolution's on the floor. Those in favor? Of receipt? None opposed, that's carried. I need a motion to a mover and a seconder to suspend the rules to allow a motion to be introduced without notice. Moved by Councillor Tyler Morin, second by Councillor Bauer. That the rules of procedure be suspended in order to introduce a motion without notice regarding addressing online hate. As this is a motion to suspend the rules, will require 2/3 or 5 votes. Those in favor of suspending the rules? I see 6 hands. That's carried. Councillor Khan, your motion will be next. So just let me go down here. Oh, sorry, hold on a second. The next thing we have is a motion to reconsider, and this is to do with the acceleration of the automatic speed enforcement program in Ajax. As you'll recall, during budget time, due to budget pressures, we removed the implementation of the automatic speed enforcement for this term, or sorry, for this year, due to budget restrictions. I wish to bring it back because our financial situation has changed with a surplus that we did not realize at the time. And I think had we known this, we probably would not have made the decision to not bring this forward at budget time. So as this is, again, requires 2/3, I'll move it if I can get a seconder to reconsider. Seconded by, I saw Councillor Tyler Moran. So let me bring this up here. I have to turn the chair over to Councillor Lee, and this will also require 2/3.
So right now we're at the reconsideration. Did you want to speak on that, Mayor?
I kind of did a little bit prematurely, but thank you, Councillor Lee. This is, again, something that you, myself, and most members of council ran on in the last election was automatic speed enforcement. You talked earlier about traffic calming. We spent a lot of money on traffic calming over the years, and hasn't worked as effectively as I think we'd hoped. We've resorted a few times now to putting in some stop signs that weren't necessarily warranted, but have sort of done the trick. But this is another tool that has proven to be very, very effective time and time again. And most recently, the region started their pilot last year, and they've just expanded it by, I think, another, Councillor Crawford, is it 4 more. And the city of Pickering has just announced that they're going to do 2 units now as well. So something we started many years ago and put a hold on, other municipalities are now passing us on. So I'd like to see this reconsidered, and we can make that decision at the time when the motion comes forward, but we need to pass this first to be able for me to bring that motion forward.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Tyler Moran, as a seconder, do you want to speak on the reconsideration?
Yeah, and I have a question actually for staff, or a request that they confirm something. So when this first came up in the last round, Mayor Collier spoke about the fact that this isn't a cash grab. This is about safety. This is about us getting a handle on, speeding. So can staff speak to, really quickly, just a condensed version, or
order, Chair?
Yeah.
This is on the main motion, Councillor Tyler Moore, and I just want to have this is just a motion to reconsider.
So we'll get to that, Councillor Moore. Do you want on the reconsideration? Any other council members want to speak to this? So we'll call to vote. We need 2/3. All in favor? All opposed? So we are at reconsideration. It's been reconsidered. Mayor Collier to speak on the main motion. Seconded by Regional Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, I did already speak to it quite a bit. We've been round around this for the last 2 and almost a half years now. Again, this was approved last year by council. It was part of our budget process. And had it not been for COVID and some of our budget restrictions, this would have already been passed and probably would be hopefully being rolled out right now. But as I said before, because of budget restrictions, we made the difficult decision to not implement this and bring it forward. And we were going to implement it for next year was the intent. The financial situation has changed. We did have a considerable surplus. And I'm basically would like to see this brought forward now as I think it should have been brought forward in February when we did the operating budget. And that's all I think I need to say about this. It's something that we know is, I don't remember the exact numbers, but in excess of reducing speed more than 40%, I believe it was. It might have been 60%. I don't remember the exact numbers from all the reports, but it's a significant proven method. It's something we've all talked about, and I've promised residents, many residents, and we've already done all the work to create all the community safety zones. We allocated $75,000. We spent the money to put signage up on all the community safety zones. Even if this gets approved today, there is a lead time, and it may or may not even get put in and operational by the end of this year. It might still be the start of next year. I'm hoping by the end of this year. But if we don't do this now and we wait to do this next budget, then it probably won't be up and running before the election and even this term of council potentially. So I think it's something that we need to do. It's proven to slow people down. It is not a cash grab. We know that from the numbers. We absolutely know that from the numbers. This is a break-even scenario at best. This is not a non-tax revenue cash grab, but we know it does slow people down, and it does, by slowing people down, save lives. And we've all heard residents say, you know, we don't need a kid to get killed or something first before we do something. Nobody wants that, and of course we don't want that, and nobody's ever said that. But and thankfully it hasn't happened. But I think this is something we really need to be moving on. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Regional Councilor Crawford is the seconder. Do you want to speak on this?
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that the most important piece in this whole motion for me is number 2. I believe that this program should be run by Durham Region. I believe that it needs to be it needs to have that umbrella. I think that it creates an equity across the board for municipalities. Some of our northern municipalities may not be able to afford to put ASE in, and they could have a shared camera program throughout the northern parts of Durham. And I think that if you circle back 3 years ago, when we came on here, we were all worried about our jobs as regional councillors, and they were talking about creating efficiencies in government. This is a prime example of an efficiency that could be created at Durham Region and running this program under this one umbrella. So to me, number 2 is the most important part of this, and we need to be continuing to advocate for that Durham Region takes this over. But in the short term, we know also that things in government never move quickly. So in the short term, we can get these things up and running. I do have a question, if it's at all possible through you, to ask Mr. Greaves around the speeding board that are recording speeds at this point. I think they're supposed to be up in the next week or 2. I think they're purchased, is that right?
Mr. Greaves, can you speak on that?
Yes, I can. So through Chair to Regional Councillor Crawford, yes, the delivery of those boards is actually expected tomorrow. And then it'll be a week or 2 to have them scheduled for installation and the required setup. So I would expect sometime in July, all 12 boards will be up and running, which will give us current 2021 traffic data and better understanding of the 12 community safety zones that we have established, and then would be helping us be prepared for automated speed enforcement should it be implemented in 2021 or in 2022.
And they will run constantly, right? So that you'll understand the time frames as where the speeding happens. Is that correct?
That's correct. They are 24-hour operation, two-way data collection, so collecting both directions of travel.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Tyler Moore, I believe you had a question for staff.
I did, and Mayor Collier answered it. So I'm good. I just wanted to make it clear to some of our viewers and some of our friends and residents that the ASC is not a cash grab, I'm quoting, and that it's a break-even scenario, and it's about safety. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Did I miss any other councillors who wanted to speak on this? Okay, I'm just gonna throw in my 2 cents. And ultimately, yes, Mayor Collier is right. This is something that we had all, most of us at least, I'm not sure if everyone had, mentioned as a platform or at one point or another. I guess my only concern is just managing expectations. Yes, we're probably going to reduce speeds 40 to 60%, but I don't want the residents to believe that we can just put these anywhere. I think it's really imperative for staff to really clearly define this program. I mean, we all understand it by now. We've had a few reports to it, but the average layman who sends us those emails saying, yes, some kid in Vaughan died. Do you want this on my local road? I want, a speed camera on a 8-house road we have to manage expectations and realize that's probably not going to happen, right? Right now, it's only in designated zones. And so that may evolve over time, but I just want to make sure expectations are managed, that this isn't going to be the catch-all for all speeding throughout the entire town. That is not going to be possible. Ultimately, it's up to us, as in the residents, to, you know, police ourselves and police our neighbors. And if we see speeding, we should call it. I mean, a lot of it happens within our own neighborhoods from specifically our neighbors. So perhaps we could, you know, continue to address that as well. So I'm happy to support this. I think it's, you know, we've addressed the two issues of the cost, in that we did have some extra money left over, as well as bringing it up at the region, which at the region we'll absolutely support as well. Now that we're seeing other Durham region municipalities bring it up. So that's my points. I believe Mayor Collier wanted to close.
Actually, thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to thank Councillor Crawford for bringing up that piece about the region. I do expect that we will be bringing a motion forward to the region, requesting them to consider taking over the program. But I do thank you. I did forget that. I just wanted to ask for a recorded vote, please. I think this is a very important initiative, and I think it's important that we do that. Thank you.
A recorded vote has been requested, Clerk.
Thank you. On the motion, in favor or opposed, Mayor Collier,
In favor.
Councillor Bauer,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Crawford,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Dyes,
Favor.
Councillor Khan,
In favor.
Councillor Tyler Morin,
In favor.
Chair Lee.
In favor. Sorry, I've never heard Chair Lee before. Thank you. In favor. I believe that passes 7-0.
Thank you, colleagues.
Sorry, it's still me, I believe. The next,
In the chair.
we have Mayor Collier again on the permanent installation of Mississaugas of Scugog First Nation flag in Town Hall. Mayor Collier.
Thank you, Chair. And myself and Councillor Khan are bringing this forward. I think we're all aware today's National Indigenous Day, and it's very, very important, especially in light of what happened with the 215 children being found at the residential school in Kamloops, another 104 found at the other residential school in Winnipeg, I believe it was. And the region today raising the Mississaugas flag in a permanent location just as early as today at the Region of Durham headquarters in Whitby, which is timely. And I actually wasn't aware that was happening when we brought this motion forward, but I'm glad that it is. So this basically is on the same lines. We have our land acknowledgement that we do at the start of every meeting. I've decided that I think every member of council should have the opportunity to make that land acknowledgement. So we're going to be rotating through because I do think it's so important. This just kind of takes it to the next step. It's one thing to have that at the start of each council meeting, but it's another thing to have a permanent sign or identification, in this case, the flag, showing it. And that to me kind of really shows our solidarity as well. I think it shows our intent that we are serious and we're willing to put our money where our mouths are. And that's why I'm bringing this forward. It's a very small cost. It's a very quick, easy thing to do, but I think the significance of it is enormous. So I'll leave it there and ask for my colleagues' support. Thank you.
Councillor Khan is the seconder. Did you want to speak on this?
Thank you, Chair Lee. In one sentence, I think it's a good start to acknowledge the painful history of our indigenous peoples, and we should be able to fly that flag proudly. Thank you, Mayor Collier, for including me in this, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is there any of the members of council who wanted to speak or questions? Regional Councillor Crawford.
Just a comment that this is one of the proudest motions that I have ever had to vote for, and I'm very, very pleased that this is coming forward. Thank you very much.
Any other councillors want to speak on this? Regional Councillor Dyes.
Just basically, it's long overdue, and I'm pleased to see it come forward. And I'm pleased to see that, you know, most people here in Canada are more aware of what they have faced with the residential schools and the impacts it has had on many, many generations. They are First Nations, and we need to recognize that and respect that.
Any other councilors want to speak? Wish to speak on this? I'll just throw in my 2 cents. I think it's a very good first step that the town's can take. I think we've taken a lot of these first steps. We're one of the first municipalities, if I'm not mistaken, with land acknowledgement. We had hosted the UN summit, on reconciliation. But I have Indigenous friends who don't want to be forgotten the next day after this happens. So in other words, like this is obviously been an ongoing problem for many generations, and it's to use something that's been used before, a band-aid solution sometimes that doesn't necessarily address the full issue. So I like the fact that we're at the end there. It says coordinating a smudging ceremony prior to the installation of the flagpole, and connecting with the Mississaugas and Scugog Island First Nation group, because only they can tell us what lasting change to them means. I think the flag is a fantastic first step, but I also think there's many other steps we can take as a municipality. Examples are our road naming policy, which I brought up at a previous council meeting. And I understand the history evolved, but there was history before World War II. There was history on these lands that predated all of us that will never get acknowledged with a road name, for example. And I think that would be a good example down the line. So I'm more than happy to support this. I absolutely understand the intent behind it, and I 100% support it, but I just don't want the effort to ever stop. I think this learning, this truthing reconciliation has to be an ongoing process, not only for all of us, but for the town and the region. So thank you. And Councillor Khan?
Yeah, if everybody's done, with the mover's permission, I'd like to ask for a recorded vote, please.
A recorded vote has been requested. Any other councillors to speak on this? Then clerk, after you.
On the motion, in favor or opposed, Councillor Khan,
In favor.
Councillor Tyler Morin,
In favor.
Mayor Collier,
In favor.
Councillor Bauer,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Crawford,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Dyes,
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Lee.
In favor. And I believe that passes unanimously, if I pronounce that word right. I'm not sure, as the seconder, do I still chair if you're seconding? Fantastic, I'm on a roll. So we have now the a motion for the call for a national action summit on Islamophobia. We have moved by Councillor Khan and seconded by Mayor Collier. Councillor Khan, after you.
Thank you. As you can imagine, this is very emotional for me. And the lethal and violent attacks on the Canadian Muslim community are an ongoing reality, as demonstrated by the recent hate-motivated killing of a Muslim family in London and the Quebec City mosque shootings in 2017. And last year, there's the 58-year-old caretaker in front of the IMO Mosque in Rexdale was sitting there doing protocols for social distancing, and he was stabbed in the throat. He was murdered, and the perpetrator just walked away and left him to die. I'm asking Ajax Council to support the call from the National Council of Canadian Muslims for the Government of Canada to hold an urgent national action summit on Islamophobia, convening leaders from all levels of government to chart an actionable path forward to end violence against Muslims. And I'd like Ajax Council to call on the province of Ontario to provide funding to municipalities and community organizations to develop street-level anti-racism programs to quell all forms of hate, including Islamophobia. That is my piece on that. Thank you, Chair. You're muted.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Khan. Mayor Collier, did you want to, as the seconder, do you want to speak on this?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. And I was actually quite honored when Councillor Khan brought this forward and asked me to be part of it. As the mayor of a community with such a large Muslim population, I've spent quite a bit of time over at the mosque up on Harwood and a couple of the other ones as well, and gotten pretty close with a lot of our Muslim brothers and sisters. And when we see these type of things happen, like the terrorist attack in London a couple of weeks ago, and the other items that Councillor Khan mentioned, this stuff just has to stop. I mean, We've seen the murder of George Floyd, which just passed the first year anniversary of, and the power that's come out of the Black Lives Matter movement. We've seen you and Councillor Bauer bring forward the anti-Asian hate and you know the what's come out of that, and by talking about these things and raising awareness of these things, we're able to put things in place that will help us move forward as a community and hopefully as a nation. We just have to say this is just not acceptable, and we have to take action. So this is just another step for that for our Muslim brothers and sisters here, and I'm proud to put my name next to Councillor Khan's on this. I think it is the absolute right thing to do, and let's hope that by the more we talk about it, the more actions that we take, eventually we can stamp out any form of racism and any form of attacks and hate that we see. We have another motion coming later on hate on social media. I mean, this Councillor Khan shared something today about Minister Sakaria and a comment that was put on. So this stuff just has to stop. And we need to tell people very openly that this is not acceptable and will not be tolerated. And I think that this task force and putting together this what did we call it? The
Summit.
National Summit, thank you, on Islamophobia is the absolute minimum that can be done as far as opening the conversation and helping move this forward. So happy to second it. Thank you, Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Does any member of council speak on this? Regional Councillor Crawford.
I'm just wondering, Regional Councillor Lee, as a member of the Durham Regional Anti-Racism Task Force, has this ever come up during any of your meetings?
So thank you for the question. So unfortunately, we haven't had any meetings yet. We're still in the recruitment phase. So Alison Alexander, she had mentioned that recruitment is going to go through into the summer, and hopefully by late summer, early fall, we'll have the task force up and running. It is very much going to run on the hub and spoke model. So we're going to have specific working committees on anti-Black racism. I'm sure Islamophobia and anti-Asian racism will be part of it. So I don't have specifics yet, but it's absolutely on the radar.
Okay, good to know. Okay, thank you. Great motion. I'm very happy to support it.
Do any other members of council wish to speak on this? All right, well, I actually do, no surprise, right? But so thank you, Councillor Khan, for bringing this forward. Listen, you've always been a phenomenal advocate as Ajax's first practicing Muslim on council, right? So you've always provided a very distinct community point of view on this. It was devastating hearing at at those vigils that we had in Durham Region, the tangible fear of people who all of a sudden were afraid to walk outside their houses for fear that all of a sudden, because of the actions of individuals, it became a real possibility that they can get run down based on what they're wearing, the religion that they chose to practice. And it is a scary world we live in. And all the more reason, I've said this countless times, to lend our voices to support all these issues, all these marginalized groups, all these racialized groups or community groups that may not have the same voice. So it's a fantastic motion. I hope the province and the federal government are listening. I think they are. We heard the resounding from our premier and prime minister, but ultimately it really starts with internal discussions with ourselves, our family members, our friends. That's how we're going to affect change, in my opinion, and it'll start from there. So yeah, I will call for a recorded vote if I believe Councillor Khan is going to ask for that. So clerk, keeping you busy today.
In favor or opposed, Councillor Tyler Morin.
In favor?
Mayor Collier.
In favor.
Councillor Bauer.
In favor.
Regional Councillor Crawford.
In favor.
Regional Councillor Dyes.
Favor.
Councillor Khan.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Lee.
In favor. And I believe that was unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I believe I think I'm done for the day. So back to you, Mayor Collier.
You're done. The next motion supporting for autistic adults, we have already dealt with earlier in the meeting. Moving on to the business horizon notice of motion on construction noise, moved by Councillor Crawford and Councillor Bauer. Councillor Crawford, please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is really to do with at the beginning of the pandemic, the hours were dictated by the Ontario government, provincial government, sorry, that they were allowed to begin work at 6 a.m. and work up to 10 p.m. or any time of the day construction related. And I'm asking that they would rescind that. It was actually taken away from the bylaws of the municipalities. And I'm asking that the government rescind that order and put it back in the control of the noise bylaws of the different municipalities. So many of our residents are working from home. So many, are trying to enjoy their time. Last year was an incredibly hot summer, and they couldn't even have their windows open. And the construction was just going nonstop, starting at 6 a.m. in the morning. So I'm asking that the government give our residents a break and put the construction times back in the hands of the municipal bylaws. I guess with the exception, I think there's an exception here of healthcare. I think I had an exception in here somewhere. Yes, the for the exceptions of expedient healthcare related projects.
Thank you. Councillor Bauer, do you wish to speak as a second?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll just have a quick comment. Thank you, Regional Councillor Crawford, for bringing this forward. I'm very happy to second it. 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., it's a long time. And it can be very trying on residents impacted. Many more are at home because of COVID. And the constant noise and distraction of noise can really, weigh a toll on your mental health. It can increase your anxiety, increase your stress. And we're already feeling that because of how crazy this world has been over the last year and a half or so. So I'm happy to second this motion for that consideration of just let's bring it back to the municipality's control. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of council wish to ask questions or make comment on the motion? I'll just very quickly just make a comment. I understand why they probably brought this out, but anytime an upper level of government, federal and provincial, sort of overrides or vetoes our local powers, we have problems. And I'll talk about the marijuana grow down in South Ajax that was federally licensed, that we had a heck of a time getting anything done on. And the smell was overwhelming for all the residents down there. In this case, it's the sound is overwhelming, as well as the construction noise, the dirt and everything else. So I think it's important that these controls remain at the municipal level, because we are the ones on the ground here. We're the ones that know our municipalities, and we're the ones that get the complaints from the residents. So I absolutely agree, except for in the matter of something to do with like healthcare, which is priority, or long-term care in this case. I don't think there's any other real urgent things that would require 6 a.m. starts and that type of thing. So happy to support this. Thanks for bringing it forward, ladies. Anything further? Seeing none. Those in favor and support? I see all hands. That carries unanimously. Moving on to the next. Councillor Crawford, don't go anywhere. I think this is yours.
Carrying on, thank you, Your Worship.
There you go. Go ahead.
Carrying on with the noise again. This is a motion that if clerk could just move it straight up. I'm requesting that I don't know how many times we get complaints about the the noisy mufflers on the roads. It seems to be Wesley Road, but I'm sure they're on all all local roads. And I think that the only way that we can actually start to get a control of it is if we go to the source of where the mufflers are being sold from. So I'm asking that the Ontario government and the Minister of Transportation put a cap on any exhaust systems that are over 80 decibels, that they just simply can't be purchased. Talk about mental health. If you're trying to go to sleep at night, if your windows are open or you don't have air conditioning and those things are ripping up and down the street, they are loud, even if during the day. It's ear piercing. So this is just a motion asking for them to put a cap on it for 80 decibels, and that they can't exceed that.
Thank you. Councillor Tyler Moore, do you wish to speak as a seconder?
Thank you, Worship. And yeah, it's a great motion, I think. Well, great might be a little strong, but you know, we're not prudes. I understand it's exciting to get your car going, and I understand a lot of young people have disposable income because they're at home, and you know, that's all good. But not only do we hear a lot of, what I hate calling them complaints, but we get calls from residents speaking about this. I hear it all the time right here in my own neighborhood on residential streets. It's really loud. And it's almost like, you know, if you're not gonna, they don't want to stop. It seems like it's been the most ever right now. People pay a lot of money for taxes. They pay a lot of money for their mortgages. They should be able to water their lawn in peace, you know, or be able to put their kids down in peace. So I just think it's way over the top right now. So if anybody hearing this, I don't want them to think I'm a prude or anybody on council is a prude. I'm just trying to be reasonable here. So obviously I support this, and I'm glad it's in play, and I hope everyone understands on council and will support it as well, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other member of council? Councillor Lee.
Through the chair to the mover, what is the current decibel limit right now? Are we within? Are we just kind of asking to stay within that limit, or are we going below what the actual limit is?
Just to stay within the limit.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I fully support this. I literally have one driver on my street, and they always choose to drive out at about 11:45 every night, and they speed, and so the speeding causes the muffler to go louder. And it's I am a prude. I'll be honest. That's obnoxious, right? You're absolutely doing it for attention, and I'm sure there's car enthusiasts who will disagree with me, but yeah, I have a child. There are seniors sleeping. I need my sleep. The reasons go on. And I think it's a very selfish thing to, you know, put your vanity over the needs of your neighbors. But that's just me. So fully support this. It's about time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Further? Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. Regional Councillor Lee, I think you should report this matter to your local councillor of Ward 2, and we'll have this taken care of.
He's too good. He responds too quickly. That's my problem.
Thank you, Chair.
Anything further? Councillors Crawford and Tyler Moore, and I'd invite you or anybody to come sit on my front porch some night and just hear what goes by. I'm not on Westney, but I'm on McGill, and especially on a Saturday. Wow. So I don't consider myself a prude. Maybe I am, but I don't consider myself. But I do think that people should have a right to enjoy their homes and be able to be in their homes and have their windows open. And not have to be subjected to that. So absolutely.
Sorry, can we put a friendly in the bottom to also copy DRPS and the OPP? Would that be appropriate?
Councillor Crawford, do you accept that friendly amendment?
100%. Is Durham Regional Police, they're already on there? Are they on
They're
there?
not actually, as far as I can see on the bottom.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay. They're actually going through a process right now. Actually, they're part of the whereas, where they're actually going to stop people, and they are charging people with modified mufflers and causing excessive exhaust, any of that would cause pollution. So they're actually part of this motion anyway. But yes, OPP is fine. Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
I would just also like to point out to the clerk, can you just, in all the motions tonight, they were obviously all submitted before the cabinet shuffle. And I think a lot of them need some minor amendments just to the titles or to the the ministries that they now represent potentially. So please just make those updates. I don't think they require any sort of votes. So in favor of this motion, those in favor? I see all hands. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to road safety, Councillor Crawford and Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Your Worship. This actually has a lot to do with the automated speed enforcement, and that, as I understand it, the province, this is still a pilot program as far as they are concerned. And what I'm asking is that the province actually set out a framework, but also within this, Clerk, would you mind scooching that up to the whereas? There we go. I'm asking the province, in looking at the framework, to have more flexibilities for the local municipalities or regions. So currently we have to zone certain roads in order that an ASE camera can go on. And generally speaking, it is around schools and areas, because of course, that's where you want to be able to control the speed. But we do have roads, our local roads and our regional roads, that could use automated speed enforcements, but they are limited because of the zoning of it. So I'm just asking that when the province is looking at the framework, that they allow greater flexibility in the use of the ASE cameras to be able to help municipalities create a safer environment on the roads.
Thank you. Councillor Khan is the seconder. Do you wish to speak to this?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any other members of council have any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing, seeing none. Those in favor? I see all hands. That is carried. We're moving right along. Councillor Dyes, Councillor Bauer, paid parking motion, please. Councillor Dyes, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. With the new waterfront management plan, which came out in May, we've had quite a lot of feedback from our residents. And they've had some very, interesting points about the equity of the system. And as you know, we're trying to balance the needs of our residents as well as the number of visitors that we're seeing in our waterfront area. So it has an impact on both. And we have increased, like we always have as our population has grown, we have had to increase bylaw officers and security and do some of those issues and have people out looking at parking issues and also putting signage out where you could park on which side of the street. So we're seeing, I think part of it obviously is COVID. But the interesting part too was, I guess, with the fees, we'll start with number one, the fee structure. We really don't have a structure that has a time limit on it or a time frame at all. So, if you're going to come, we had a lot of feedback that $20 was a lot of money for a lot of different various reasons. And that, if it really didn't speak to people, say a mother wants to take her kids to the playground for an hour or two kind of thing. It didn't speak to that. It also doesn't speak to economic development. It's a deterrent. I know that we have to look at all different angles, but we also increase the number of streets where you could park, where there were walkways to the waterfront, which helps relieve that a bit too. But we really felt that, there were some people that would want to come for a couple hours and that's not there. And we really should have a look at that. There's a lot, Councillor Bauer and I understand that we will be reviewing this in the fall at the end of the operating season. And actually they will be going out and doing a public process to get some input back from the public. We wanted to ensure in number two that directing, having that process and directing that process, putting in the different things that we have heard over time for them to review would be a good way to kind of resolve some of the issues that we are having down at the waterfront. And some are easily managed. Some may not be, but when they do their report, they can do that. So we've heard a lot from our residents. We felt that we needed to let them know that we'd heard them, that we will be reviewing it, and we could reconsider, we should reconsider, the fee. Again, it's about economic development into our neighborhood. We put a lot of support behind our ECD department, and we do a lot of tourism through Durham Region and through Ajax itself. And with the Waterfront Trail, there's a lot of tourism done by other organizations such as the Waterfront Trust. So these are all very important things. And we also receive a lot of, or I should say a lot, but we have also in the past have received funding from many other groups and organizations to fund initiatives along that Waterfront Trail and on the waterfront to ensure that people can use it. So I think it's important that we look at this. I know that, as I said, I know the review's coming up, but we wanted to make sure that what we had heard, some of the things we had heard would be included in that review. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Lisa?
Councillor Bauer, would you like to speak as seconder?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Regional Councillor Dyes. Thank you, Joanne. I think you covered pretty much everything. It's a new program. We don't know. We made there were, projections of what it would cost or what we would receive. Lots of issues, I think, that have been pointed out to us from our residents that maybe, that's another lens or another perspective. So lots of resident feedback that we've received. And I think one of the, as far as point 4 of the motion, one of the, sorry, I'm tired, my words aren't coming out. It was made very clear to us that the impacted residents on those area streets felt that they would have wanted to have more input or consultation. So we put that in there so that we can ask for that. And there was some initially, but clearly they would like to have more opportunity. So a review for sure. The cost, $20 is a lot of money for an hour. So definitely reviewing it for more options and more price structures is important as well. So I'm just repeating what Joanne has already said, but thank you very much for bringing this motion. Happy to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. I don't usually go first, but I'm going to on this one. And then I'll go to questions from council because I do have an amendment that I would like to bring, which may help bring this to a conclusion quicker. So I have an amendment, and I'll turn the chair over to Councillor Lee, moved by myself, second by Councillor Khan, that item number 1 be deleted. And I'll just speak to that quickly. And Councillor Bauer, you kind of indirectly made some of my points in your comment. We all, as a group, received the business plan and this whole thing back in November as a staff report, and then we also all, as a group, made a decision at budget time in February to put this plan in place. This plan is only in place for 40 days over the entire season. And we're only about 3 weeks into it. We've only done a small piece of it. But through that budget, we made some pretty strong commitments. We hired a number of new bylaw staff to police this. We put up signs for this. We incurred some significant costs to do this. And to just arbitrarily cut the fee in half now without having that review and without going through and having that fulsome look at the whole program, just to make take a knife to the one piece without that background, I think would be a mistake. But also what that would do would transfer these costs that currently are to be borne by those paying the fee to use our facilities and transfer that onto the backs of Ajax taxpayers, which is what it would do. Because we made these decisions to hire and do all these things based on a business plan and a certain amount of revenue. to offset. And I remember exactly, this is a break-even plan. This is not going to generate revenue from the town. The fees that we're getting are exactly pretty much what's estimated it's going to cost us to enforce. I absolutely agree with the fulsome review, and I support 2, 3, and 4 because I think we're doing that anyway. But let's put it in writing and let's make it happen for sure. So I absolutely support 2, 3, and 4 for the motion. But to just make an arbitrary decision without doing the research and everything first, I don't think it'd be the right way to go. And I've also had a number of complaints, and I've also talked to other members of council. Like for instance, in Pickering Village, it was identified that, you know, what if you're a business owner and you pay corporate tax, or sorry, business tax? You are a taxpayer, but you don't live in Ajax. You don't get a free parking permit, right? But we couldn't just make that change right then because there's so many other unintended consequences that maybe we didn't think of yet. But all these will be vetted and analyzed through the review that's going to happen at the end. Residents reached out to me from Whitby whose senior parents like to come here and have a disability, a handicap parking permit. And should people with a disability or a handicap permit have to pay for parking? I don't know. Right, but those are things that will be established and done through the review. So I'm happy to support the motion, but since we've already dealt with a number of other councillors on these issues and all agreed to wait and do a fulsome review of the whole program at the end, I think it's a big mistake to just go and make a, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'll call it a knee-jerk reaction just based on some initial pushback since we've only been running the program for 3 weeks so far, I believe. I think this needs to run its course, and once it's run its course, then we'll be able to make sort of educated, informed decisions, and staff will have time to analyze all of the data, and we may come up with 5 or 10 different tweaks that we need to make this program work better. But I don't know that right now, but I can't make a decision on the floor on that without having those facts and having that data analyzed. So I'm happy to support the rest of the motion, but I can't support item 1. Thank you.
No, apologies. Would anyone else like to speak on the motion? We have, I believe, Councillor Khan, you were the seconder, so after you.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Bauer and Regional Councillor Dias, I think as the ward councillors, you're doing the absolute right thing to bring this up. I also understand that and I did investigate a bit because I know we made an agreement and we moved forward. And we did make a significant investment towards this. And it's 40 days. So I think the fulsome, I'm just repeating what the mayor said pretty much, but I think you guys did the right thing in bringing this forward, but we did as the ward councillors. But I think we do need to wait and go through the fulsome review, as you've indicated in number 2. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tyler Moore, excuse me.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lee. So I'm really glad that you're bringing this up at this time to the movers, because I think it shows a quick answer to the residents saying we hear them. So I like that you're bringing this up at this time. I like that you included, the E3E was important to me, then including non-resident business owners. A lot of great stuff in here. So would Director Valentin have anything to say about I mean, not that I don't believe the mayor when it says it's basically set up to kind of run flat, but do you have any comments in regards to if it gets reduced from $20 to $10, is that a big deal? Does it make a difference? Obviously, it's a huge difference. It's 50% of the revenue. Can you speak to that, Director Valentin?
Sure,
or if you
thank
can't,
you.
I understand.
Through the mayor. Based on the budget numbers and the report that came forward in November, it was considered to be a break-even program with the revenue set or the permits being set at $20 per permit. So in taking that figure down, we estimated about $68,000 in revenue from that program. So if we reduce the amount of the permit from $20 to $10, that's going to run a deficit of about $34,000 based on the budget numbers.
Okay. All right, thank you for your answer. And just a reminder, I don't know if anybody's ever said it, it's pretty obvious. You don't have to pay any fees if you live in Ajax. Everyone out there knows that, I hope. You just have to sign up, which is a bit tricky, but I think that's been smooth as well. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lee.
Thank you. Would any other members of council like to speak on this? If not, I guess the only thing procedurally, I think I would have preferred it if we just separated one from the rest. I don't necessarily disagree with, like the mayor was just saying he agrees with the rest of it, just the first part. I think by separating and having separate votes, it would get the same result, I suppose, but also allow Councillor Bauer and Dyes to at least put their community concerns forward without being stricken from the record, so to speak. But it's the motion's on the floor right now, so if no one else wants to speak to it, we will call for a vote.
Well, Chair, if that's the intent, point of order, if that's the intent, we can always just have a recorded vote and Councillor Dyes and Bauer can vote against it. And it serves the same purpose.
Sure. So why don't we just call that a recorded vote,
then.
Requested by Mayor Collier. And Clerk, whenever you are ready.
On the amendment.
On the amendment.
So we're voting on the amendment, correct?
On the
Sorry.
amendment. What is in the screen in front of us right now?
So on the amendment, in favor or opposed, Mayor Collier,
Yes, in favor.
Councillor Bauer,
Opposed?
Regional Councillor Crawford,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Dyes,
Opposed.
Councillor Khan,
In favor.
Councillor Tyler Morin,
Favor.
Deputy Mayor Lee.
In favor.
That's 5-2.
Thank you. So that passes. Back to the main motion and back to the mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. And I'll open it up to questions and comments from council, please. Councillor Lee.
I just kind of just reiterating what we've all known. I don't get the same feedback because I am the Ward 2 regional councillor, and it didn't really affect my residents as much as it affected Councillor Dyes and Councillor Bauer. But that said, they've both called me personally in regards to this just to get feedback, to get my point of view, to just share their frustrations and share how things can be affected. So I think in terms of the rest of the motion, these are very, like the mayor said, we'd rather just kind of have this in writing, just so staff knows specifically, these are some specific pain points that this program has revealed, even after only 40 days. So I commend both the Ward 3 councillors for, advocating for their residents. And I hopefully you can now say to them that, this plan's in motion and that they should just kind of see it through until the end of the summer. So obviously I will be happy to support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll also just point out that I believe, and Mrs. Cooper or Mr. Hannon perhaps correct me, but we've passed 5,000 cars registered of Ajax residents for.
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So to me, that shows that this is working. And anyway, that's all I'll say about that. Councillor Crawford?
I just wanted to say that we have received feedback in Ward 1 for sure. And you know what? I think we try something new. Sometimes it works, and sometimes you got to go back and say, maybe we could tweak a few things. And I think that running this out till the end of September and then getting that report and looking at areas where we can tweak things, and I think that's the right way to go. And I do support the motion the way it is now. I think that I look forward to hearing what that report says at the end. How many visitors we've had, how much revenue did we actually break even, that kind of thing. So I do support and I do recognize that this has been difficult for the Ward 3 councillors. And so I appreciate the fact that you did bring this forward and represent your area the way you're supposed to. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay, hearing none. Those in favor of the motion as amended? Any opposed? Councillor Bauer and Dye is opposed. Thank you very much. And the final motion brought through with the waiving of the rules is Councillor Khan and Councillor Crawford with the online hate motion.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank Regional Councillor Crawford for supporting me with this and staff. I brought this on and over the weekend it was done. It was a lot of work. And again, this came about, through the whole Islamophobia thing that's going on, but that's just part of it. And it's addressing online hate. Even when we were mourning the loss of that London family, there was so much hate with people hiding behind their keyboards and egging people on to keep doing it, to keep recording Muslim families walking and them to run them over without any consequences whatsoever. And like the mayor mentioned, I got this feed today that Minister Bethlen Falvey handed over his post to Minister Pramit Sakaria, who is a Sikh, who dresses as a Sikh, and he has a beard. And the comment that was made as he is taking over as the president of the Treasury Board of Ontario, it was horrible. It was horrible. And again, no consequences. So I'm here tonight. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms enshrines legal protections to groups identified by color, race, religion, national or ethnic origin, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or mental or physical disability. Religious groups, racialized communities, Blacks, Indigenous peoples, and the LGBTQS1 individuals are disappropriately targeted by online hate speech. And I'm seeking Ajax Council supports the introduction of a tougher federal online hate speech legislation, including a civil remedy for individuals to pursue more effective enforcement of public incitement of hate and compelling online operators to monitor and remove online hate in a timely manner or risk facing substantial fines. And finally, I'm asking that Ajax Council calls on all the federal parties to put forth a national strategy on preventing the spread of online hate and racism in Canada for consideration by voters during the next federal election. Thank you.
As the seconder, Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was unable to attend the Ajax vigil, but I did go to the Pickering one. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe MP Jennifer O'Connell mentioned that the federal government was going to put into legislation stronger, or I missed the wording. I'm not sure if it's stronger or a online hate legislation. And feel free, anyone, to correct me, my interpretation of this. But I think that this motion really wants this to happen sooner than later. This cannot be something that is said in the heat of the moment and then takes a while to get things done. And I think that if we really mean business, this is something that becomes a priority and needs to be treated that way 100%. So I'm very happy to second it. Thank you, Councillor Khan, for including me.
Thank you.
Anything further, many members of council? Councillor Lee.
I mean, just listen, we are all government, employees, and we serve, our constituents. So there's no, greater document than our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And yes, Section 2 protects fundamental freedom of free speech, freedom of expression in Canada. But even within that, there's, permissible government limits, and hate speech is absolutely one of them. So this is nothing, there's nothing new, but I'm glad we're able to take some sort of formal stance on this. We're not trying to silence people. We're just trying to make it safer for people to not fear walking out on the streets and not feel the need to be attacked on race, religion, gender, sexual orientation or anything like that. So fully support this. I think it's, it's nothing that we're not already doing, but to Regional Councillor Crawford's, observation, the government of Canada can probably tighten things up more. The founders of our charter didn't envision social media when they drafted this document. So I wouldn't mind some updating of language. So yeah, happy to support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anything further?
If I may, Your
Councillor
Worship.
Khan?
Yes, thank you very much. I did hear MP O'Connell's speech about this, but I do think it's time that our Ajax, take that strong stand on this, because we all go through that hate online as well with no consequences to people who bring it forth. So I just hope that Ajax takes that strong stand. Thank you.
Councillor Lee, are we going to go back and forth?
I just want to clarify of just like hate speech is very specific, right? And listen, people are free to criticize government. Like that is, I would argue, a reasonable expression of free speech in that case. And I don't necessarily, that's not what this is. This seems to be like focusing on the specific hate speech, not just criticism, because then it's a very different conversation. I just want to make sure that there's a delineation between the 2 points. So thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and I was referring to Minister Prabmeet. So anyways, so thank you.
Anything further on the motion? Those in favor? None opposed. That carries unanimously. That completes our motions. Are those the motions? Let me just find my place. I need a mover and seconder for the bylaws, please. Moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Bauer. The bylaw numbers 30. Oh, 1 second. Let me go back. I think I missed something. Oh, no, we're good. Bylaws. That bylaw number 38-2021 and 46-2021 be read a first, second, third time and passed. Any questions on the bylaws? Councillor Crawford.
Sorry, no, I was anxious to vote.
Those in favor? I see all hands. Those are carried. Does any member of council have any notice of motion? Thank goodness. I think
That's for September, though, right? I think
like,
yeah.
I think 9 motions is got to be some kind of record. Good job, everybody. Any new business or announcements? Councillor Crawford.
I just wanted to thank staff, Christy, Rachel Matheson, Natasha, and whoever was the army behind the Indigenous memorial that happened a few weeks ago. It was a very tight timeline, and I mentioned it to Christy on a Sunday, and before I knew it on Monday, we were having the ceremony. And I know that
Remind me at 9:30 a.m. to reach out.
Pardon?
Councillor Tyler Moore, and you're not muted.
Well, it was 9:30. It was actually 2:30, but anyway. Was my very solemn moment. Thank you very much at 10:30 at night. Anyway, I know that we all are very aware of Indigenous schools and the travesty that happened there, but the fact that that these children were ripped out of their homes and many of the parents and grandparents never knew what happened to their children or grandchildren, and this to me was such an important thing to be able to have a memory of and a monument of. And I just wanted to thank staff for all the work that they've done. And again, the flag and everything, it's just a small step forward to what we need to do. So I just wanted to thank staff.
Thank you. Any other notices or announcements? Councillor Bauer?
Sorry, Marilyn.
Thank you, Chair. Rob, I'm going to start speaking now. Just a reminder, this Thursday, June 24th, is the second installment in the Diversity Exchange Speaker Series. This presentation on Thursday will be focusing on speaker series featuring guest speaker Dr. Joseph Smith, a researcher and educator who will discuss racism and anti-Black racism. The free event will be live streamed at 2:00 in the afternoon on June 24th, and you can watch live and participate in the Q&A at facebook.com/myajax or facebook.com/AABRDF or ajax.ca/taskforce. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other member of council? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I got two of them. First things first, on June 28th, that is this coming Monday, Councillor Khan and I have our Ward 2 online community meeting with special guest Sergeant Yamada from DRPS to answer any kind of ward-based questions regarding crime and safety. So thank you, DRPS, for accepting our invitation to attend. And this Friday is my wife's birthday, so happy birthday, Amanda McInnes. Put you on the record there.
Any other oh boy, Councillor Crawford. Well, hold on. Was there anybody else who has not spoken the first time? Okay, Councillor Crawford.
Sorry, I'm not trying to extend this meeting any longer than it has to be. I did want to shout out to DRPS. We had a wonderful, a very good meeting with the Ajax Municipal Housing Group as part of their, and it's part of one of the things that Regional Councillor Lee had mentioned when the chief was at the council about community healing. And they had a horrific event happen in their community, and the police, along with the Caria community group, came in and they had an opportunity, and there were 40 people that stayed on that meeting for, I think it was a 2-hour meeting, and that was like amazing. So police were able to answer questions directly, and it was, I just wanted to shout out to DRPS that it really was a well-received meeting and well done, and to Caria too also.
Thank you. Any other notices and announcements? I'll just do one. Today kicked off Trail Fest, and we kicked off Trail Fest today with the Mayor's Ride. It was a 45-kilometer ride. Thank you to all members of council for meeting us along the way as we traveled around the town on our bikes. Some of you joining us as well on the ride, which is great. Just for residents, you need to register to participate in Trail Fest. You go to ajax.ca/town events and you can register. It's free, but you just need to register. There are, I believe, 7 different routes that you can take depending on your ability level. So you can have some fairly short, few kilometers, or the Mayor's Ride up to 45 kilometers, and anywhere in the middle. What am I missing? Oh, there is an added incentive or perhaps disincentive for the person that logs the most kilometers. No, Marilyn, it can't be you. There is I think the prize is, staff has said, I think I'm going for a ride with you, and we're going to have a special surprise stop along the way and get something probably sweet and cold. But anyway, please get out, enjoy all of our resources in town, get some fresh air, enjoy nature, and enjoy our trails, and enjoy Trail Fest this week. And just along what you were saying, Marilyn, to our staff, I know everybody's worked so hard to put all this together, Army and Poonan and Rachel and everybody else, and I know I've missed people and I apologize, but we really do appreciate all the work that you put into this and putting these together for us and for our residents to enjoy. So thank you very much, and I hope everybody gets out and has a great week this week at Trail Fest. Moving along to the confirming bylaw. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor, let's pick somebody new here. Councillor Dyes, I haven't had you in a while. And Councillor Tyler Warren. Let me find this. Moved by Councillor Dyes, second by Councillor Tyler Moore, and the bylaw number 747-2021 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ajax at its regular meeting held on June 21st be read a first, second, third time and passed. Those in favor of the confirming bylaw? I see all hands. That's carried. And finally, moved by, let me guess, Councillor Crawford, seconded by Councillor Khan, that the June 21st, 2021 meeting of the Council of the Town of Ajax be adjourned. Those in favor?
Hey.
Hey,
Aye.
do I get